welcome to a special edition live broadcast of WMD Podcast. We are doing debate analysis on the first debate of the 2024 presidential election cycle. I don't know if David does, but I have my trusty beer here. I know I'm going to need some alcohol to get through this thing, but hopefully it's more laughs than tears. And if there are tears, hopefully they're liberal ones, and so that we can sip them and stay hydrated and have a little fun while we're doing it. David, how are you doing tonight?
I'm doing all right. I just, between the two sides, I just want a good, clean fight and no eye gouging, no hitting below the belt. And I just hope America wins tonight because it's America's choice, as CNN has said.
I can promise you that America's going to lose.
By the way, was it America's choice to select these two candidates, or was it just kind of up to the powers that be?
Yeah, the latter.
Okay.
Yeah. Well,
it's the illusion of choice.
They're getting ready to jump in, and when they do, I will share the screen up here and get it on. But I wanted to read this one thing. Here it goes. I guess I'll do it during the first commercial break.
Never mind. Robert De Niro. We know whose side he's on. Tonight!
So, all right. So, anyway, while they gear up, let me just read this thing from the White House press corps.
Do you know why?
Just to look, this is not biased or anything like. So, this was a statement from the White House Correspondents Association, because some of you may have heard there's a lot of controls on this debate. There's no audience. There's nobody even allowed in the room at all, including the press. And this is what the White House Correspondents Association had to say about it. They said, quote, WHCA is deeply concerned that CNN has rejected our repeated request to include the White House travel pool inside the studio. Through conversations and advocacy, we urge CNN to grant access to at least one print pool reporter for the duration of the debate. WHCA has been informed that one print reporter will be permitted to enter the studio during a commercial break to briefly observe the setting. That is not sufficient in our view and diminishes a core principle of presidential coverage. The White House pool has a duty to document, report, and witness the president's events and his movements on behalf of the American people. The pool is there for the quote-unquote what-ifs in a world where the unexpected does happen. And, so that's from the White House press pool, and they're kind of upset about the controls. Like I said, no audience allowed in the room because we don't want Trump to say anything remotely, appealing to the common man and allow any applause. We don't want to hear any boos when Biden says something or any laughs when he inevitably has one of his gaffes
sticks
or anything
the landing.
like that. So, yeah, I'm just putting this. I just wanted to say that at the front end because I know you're all aware that some shenanigans are afoot. But even the White House press pool thinks some shenanigans are afoot, not just your humble hosts here.
Well, maybe they should have. It's number one. It sounds a little bit to me like bitter biscuitry, little bits. But what it also does is that maybe you should have held them more accountable over the last 50 years, and you wouldn't have been able to be kicked out so easily as the little fucking dog, the lap dog that you've been for 30 years now. So,
yeah,
I mean, it's what we say on the podcast all the time. Yeah. Play stupid games, you win stupid prizes, and guess what? You won your stupid fucking prize of getting kicked out because you're not that important anymore, because you're not doing your job because people's approval rating of Biden is down, right, Dane?
It ain't good. It's on life support, kind of like Biden himself. And another disclaimer I want to put out there, I see that for whatever reason, not that our Rumble people would be able to see it, but for some reason we're going live on Rumble and it's not working. It says an error has occurred on Rumble. This is usually temporary. Wait a moment and then try again. But that aside, CNN has been issuing veiled threats to content creators like us, adding any commentary. So at any point during this live stream, we may get nuked by the algo bots. But just throwing that out there if all of a sudden we go dark on you.
Presidential debate. Now reporting, Nora O'Donnell.
Are you excited, Dane? Are you
David,
excited for
Good
American
evening.
Do
We
you
are
have
just
any alcohol
moments
on
away
hand?
from one of the most
I do.
consequential
And I
events
might
of
have
this
been.
presidential campaign.
You want to mute this shit so we're
President
not talking
Biden and
through
former
Michelle
President Trump
Can or
face
whatever the
off
fuck
in
her
the
name
first
is.
debate of the general.
Yeah, we don't care what she has to say.
No, I've got plenty of alcohol on hand. I was gonna save it until later because it's only the heavy duty stuff. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna wait until the first aneurysm, and then I'll go down and get my first sip of the devil's nectar, so to speak. So
That is the age-old question. Do you want to pace yourself to make it to the end, or do you want to front run this thing and have a nice buzz going before they even get started? Because
it's fake Tapper. I love the fact not only that he comes up with the names himself, I'm assuming, but the simple fact that he just sticks to it forever. He just still calls him fake Tapper from his first rodeo. I love it.
Oh, you're talking about Trump.
Yeah, Trump. No,
That's actually one of the nicknames I've never heard him use. I thought you just came up with that on your own.
No, that was a Trumpian. We're already plagiarizing the debate. I'm not gonna plagiarize Trump's work on that one. But yeah, go ahead.
No. I was just
2 minutes,
just
1
looking
minute,
at
1
these
minute,
rules
1
here.
minute. All right. Questions are 2 minutes. Responses, rebuttals, and moderator's direction. That's not a lot of time.
Okay.
I mean,
question.
if you're deciding the fucking fate of the nation, if you do take it this seriously, why are you limiting the amount of response time to 2, 1, 1, 1, 1? How many minutes is that, Dane?
Well,
it was
5.
4 and 2. It's 6. It's 6 minutes. 6 minutes to decide the fate of the nation. Oh, that sounds like a fucking shitty Hollywood movie.
Two and then 3 ones is only 5.
I thought it was 4 ones.
I don't know.
Because
I'm
there's
not
the
good at
rebuttal,
math.
their rebuttal, and then another rebuttal, and then I thought it was a third.
Oh,
I thought
there
was a
might
fourth
have been
one there.
4.
If there's 5 or 6. Oh, here they come. Oh,
And-
he looks stern.
And all right, how much methamphetamine do you think he's on right now?
Not enough because he's staggering to the fucking stage. Maybe he's lulling him into a false sense of confidence.
Where am I?
The wily old veteran.
Donald Trump.
Oh, he looks like he's coming out. This is big ass red tie. Here we go.
Gentlemen, thanks so much for being here. Let's begin the debate, and let's start with the issue that voters consistently say is their top concern, the economy. President Biden, inflation has slowed, but prices remain high. Since you took office, the price of essentials has increased. For example, a basket of groceries that cost $100 then now costs more than $120. And typical home prices have jumped more than 30%. What do you say to voters who feel they are worse off under your presidency than they were under President Trump?
You got to take a look at what I was left when I became president and what Mr. Trump left me. We had an economy that was in free fall. The pandemic was so badly handled. Many people were dying. All he said was, it's not that serious. Just inject a little bleach in your arm. You'll be all right. The economy collapsed. There were no jobs. Unemployment rate rose to 15%. It was terrible. And so what we had to do was try to put things back together again. And that's exactly what we began to do. We created 15,000 new jobs. We brought out in the position where we have 800,000 new manufacturing jobs. But there's more to be done.
Where?
There's more to be done. Working class people are still in trouble. I come from Scranton, Pennsylvania. I come of a household where the kitchen table, if the things weren't able to be met during the month, it was a problem. Price of eggs, the price of gas, the price of
God,
housing,
he is
the price
so
of all range
nervous.
of things. That's why I'm working so hard to make sure I deal with those problems. That we're going to make sure that we reduce the price of housing. We're going to make sure we build 2 million new units. We're going to make sure we cap rents so corporate greed can't take over. The combination.
Hey, Dan, can we
of us
bump up
looking
the
at
volume a
corporate
little
greed
bit? I
is
can
the
barely
reason
hear
why
him.
there's a problem right now. In addition to that,
Didn't know
we're
he
in
was
a
gonna whisper.
situation where if you take a look at all
that
that was
better?
done in his administration, he didn't do much at all. By the time he left, things were in chaos, literally chaos. And so we put things back together. We created, I said, those jobs. We make sure we had a situation where we brought down.
I'm gonna
the
start
price of
running this
prescription
2-minute
drugs, which is
timer.
a major issue for many people. To $15 for an insulin shot as opposed to $400. No senior has to pay more than $200 for any drug, all the drugs they conclude beginning next year. And the situation is and we're going to make that available to everybody, to all Americans. So we're working to bring down the price around the kitchen table, and that's what we're going to get done.
Bring
Thank
down
you,
the
President
price around the kitchen table.
We
Did
had
you
the
get that,
greatest
David?
economy in the history of our country. We have never done so well. Everybody was amazed by it. Other countries were copying us. We got hit with COVID, and when we did, we spent the money necessary so we wouldn't end up in a Great Depression, the likes of which we had in 1929. By the time we finished, so we did a great job. We got a lot of credit for the economy, a lot of credit for the military, and no wars, and so many other things. Everything was rocking good. But the thing we never got the credit for, and we should have, is getting us out of that COVID mess. He created mandates that was a disaster for our country. But other than that, we had given them back a country where the stock market actually was higher than pre-COVID, and nobody thought that was even possible. The only jobs he created are for illegal immigrants and bounce-back jobs, the bounce back from the COVID. He has not done a good job. He's done a poor job, and inflation's killing our country. It is absolutely killing us.
Thank you, President Biden.
Well, look, the greatest economy in the world. He's the only one who thinks that, I think.
The
I don't know
COVID
anybody else that
economy
thinks
they're
that.
talking
The
about.
greatest economy in the world.
Biden's regime literally got everything they wanted, even when
He
Trump was
acts like
president.
he acts like the
himself in a
Democrats weren't in
situation
control of the
his
House and Senate
economy-
when
Yeah,
he was
he
in
acts like Trump
Yeah.
didn't do
He's the
everything
largest tax
Fauci
payer
told
in
him to
history,
do during
$1 trillion.
2020.
Which he
has
was
a deficit
mandated to
larger
do
than
because
any
he was the
president
czar
has
of
in any one
science.
term.
Yeah.
He's the only president
god
other
of
than Herbert
science.
Hoover who's lost more jobs than he had when he began, since Herbert Hoover. The idea that he did something that was significant.
You fucking
in the
moron,
military.
shut down the
You know,
entire
when
global
he was
economy.
president, they were still killing people in Afghanistan. He didn't do anything about that. When he was president, we were still finding ourselves in a position where you had a notion that we were this safe country. The truth is, I'm the only president this century that doesn't have this decade, that doesn't have any troops dying anywhere in the world like he did.
What?
President Trump, I want to follow up.
He didn't have any troops dying anywhere in the
Well, I'm
world?
going to ask you a follow-up. You can do whatever you want with the minute that we give you. I want to follow up. You want to impose a 10% tariff on all goods coming into the U.S. How will you ensure
Very
that
bad
that
idea.
doesn't drive prices even higher?
It's not going to drive them higher. It's just going to cause countries that have been ripping us off for years, like China and many others, in all
China.
fairness to China. It's going to just force them to pay us a lot of money, reduce our deficit tremendously, and give us a lot of power for other things. But he made
This
a
is one of
statement. The only
Trump's
thing he
worst
was right about
points.
is I gave you the largest tax cut in history. I also gave you the largest regulation cut in history. That's why we had all the jobs. And the jobs went down, and then they bounced back, and he's taking credit for bounce back jobs. You can't do that. He also said he inherited 9% inflation. No, he inherited almost no inflation, and it stayed that way for 14 months. And then it blew up under his leadership because they spent money like a bunch of people that didn't know what they were doing, and they don't know what they were doing. It was the worst, probably
All right,
the
Trump,
worst
but let's be fair. The
administration in
CARES
history.
Act
There's
also
never been.
exploded the
And as far
budget,
as
which you
Afghanistan
signed
is
and then
concerned, I was
lambasted
getting out of
Thomas Massey for
Afghanistan,
being
but
the
we were
only
getting
person
out
that
with
stood up against
dignity,
it.
with strength,
So,
with power.
listen,
He got
on
out.
this
It was the
issue,
most
you're both
embarrassing day
losers.
in the history of our country's life.
President Trump, over the last 8 years, under both of your administrations, the national debt soared to record highs. And according to a new nonpartisan analysis, President Trump, your administration approved $8.4 trillion in new debt, while so far,
Yep.
President Biden, you've approved $4.3 trillion in new debt. So, former President Trump, many of the tax cuts that you signed into law are set to expire next year. You want to extend them and go even further, you say. With the U.S. facing trillion-dollar deficits and record debt, why should top earners and corporations pay even less in taxes than they do now?
Because the tax cuts spurred the greatest economy that we've ever seen just prior to COVID. And even after COVID, it was so strong that we were able to get through COVID much better than just about any other country. But we spurred, that tax spurred. Now, when we cut the taxes, as an example, the corporate tax was cut down to 21% from 39%, plus beyond that. We took in more revenue with much less tax, and companies were bringing back trillions of dollars back into our country. The country was going like never before, and we were ready to start paying down debt. We were ready to start using the liquid gold right under our feet, the oil and gas right under our feet. We were going to have something that nobody else has had. We got hit with COVID. We did a lot to fix it. I gave him an unbelievable situation with all of the therapeutics and all of the things that we came up with. We gave him something great. Remember, more people died under his administration, even though we had largely fixed it. More people died under his administration than our administration, and we were right in the middle of it, something which a lot of people don't like to talk about. But he had far more people dying in his administration. He did the mandate, which is a disaster, mandating it. The vaccine went out. He did a mandate on the vaccine, which is the thing that people most objected to.
But Trump always pats himself on the back about the vaccine.
Just a very poor job. And
again,
I will tell you,
a loser
not
for
only
both
there,
of you.
but throughout the entire world, we're no longer respected as a country. They don't respect our leadership. They don't respect the United States anymore. We're like a third world nation between weaponization of his election, trying to go after his political opponent, all of the things he's done. We've become like a third world nation, and it's a shame. The damage he's done to our country, and I'd love to ask him, and will, why he allowed millions of people to come in here from prisons, jails, and mental institutions to come into our country and destroy our country.
President Trump, we will get to immigration later in this block. President Biden, I want to give you an opportunity to respond to this question.
Let's get a commercial break so Biden can get fed his lines.
The largest national debt of any president in a 4-year period, number one. Number two, that $2 trillion tax cut benefited the very wealthy. What I'm going to do is fix the tax system. For example, we have 1,000 trillionaires in America.
After 50 years of trying.
In America. And what's happening? They're in a situation where they, in fact, pay 8.2% in taxes. If they just paid 24% or 25%, either one of those numbers, they'd raise $500 million.
Well, then why don't you close the loopholes, Biden?
$500 billion? That would fund the federal government for all of about 6 weeks.
All those things we need to do.
Fucking moron.
Elder care, making sure that we continue to strengthen
Child
our
care,
healthcare
elder
system,
they just
making
throw
sure that
out
we're able
fucking
to make
platitudes.
every
Like, what have you done to
single
help either of
person,
those?
Eligible for what I've been able to do with the.
Okay, so you're making false promises again.
Excuse me.
You've had 4 years and you didn't do any of that.
Dealing with everything we have to do.
You're
with,
more concerned with Ukraine, Russia, and blaming.
we finally beat Medicare.
Thank
You beat
President
Medicare.
Biden. President Trump.
Oh, saved by the
He
bell.
beat Medicare.
Oh,
He
darn
beat
it.
it to death, and he's destroying Medicare because all of these people are coming in. They're putting them on Medicare. They're putting them on Social Security. They're going to destroy Social Security. This man is going to single-handedly destroy Social Security. These millions and millions of people coming in, they're trying to put them on Social Security. He will wipe out Social Security. He will wipe out Medicare. So he was right in the way he finished that sentence. And it's a shame. What's happened to our country in the last 4 years is not to be believed. Foreign countries, I'm friends with a lot of people. They cannot believe what happened to the United States of America. We're no longer respected. They don't like us. We give them everything they want, and they think we're stupid. They think we're very stupid people. What we're doing for other countries, and they do nothing for us. What this man has done is absolutely criminal.
Thank you, President Trump. Dana?
This is the first presidential election since the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. This morning,
Here we go.
court ruled on yet another abortion case, temporarily allowing emergency abortions to continue in Idaho, despite that state's restrictive ban. Former President Trump, you take credit for the decision to overturn Roe v. Wade, which returned the issue of abortion to the states.
Correct.
However, the federal government still plays a role in whether or not women have access to abortion pills. They're used in about 2/3 of all abortions. As president, would you block abortion medication?
First of all, the Supreme Court just approved the abortion pill, and I agree with their decision to have done that, and I will not block it. And if you look at this whole question that you're asking, complex but not really complex. 51 years ago, you had Roe v. Wade, and everybody wanted to get it back to the states. Everybody, without exception. Democrats, Republicans, liberals, conservatives, everybody wanted it back. Religious leaders. And what I did
Biden's
is I put
hamster
3
wheels
great
turning.
Supreme Court justices on the court, and they happened to vote in favor of killing Roe v. Wade and moving it back to the states. This is something that everybody wanted. Now, 10 years ago or so, they started talking about how many weeks and how many this, getting into other things. But every legal scholar throughout the world, the most respected, wanted it brought back to the states. I did that. Now the states are working it out. If you look at Ohio, it was a decision that was an end result that was a little bit more liberal than you would have thought. Kansas, I would say the same thing. Texas is different. Florida is different. But they're all making their own decisions right now. And right now, the states control it. That's the vote of the people. Like Ronald Reagan, I believe in the exceptions. I am a person that believes. And frankly, I think it's important to believe in the exceptions. Some people, you have to follow your heart. Some people don't believe in that. But I believe in the exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of the mother. I think it's very important. Some people don't. Follow your heart. But you have to get elected also. And because that has to do with other things. You got to get elected.
I mean,
He's not wrong.
he's not lying. This is a shrewd political calculation.
And even after birth. After birth, if you look at the former governor of Virginia, he was willing to do this. He said, we'll put the baby aside and we'll determine what we do with the baby, meaning we'll kill the baby. What happened is we brought it back to the states.
It's
and
also killing the baby in the womb, but I guess we're not going to split hairs, pun intended.
Thank you. President Biden?
It's been a terrible thing, what you've done. The fact is that the vast majority of constitutional scholars supported Roe.
Yeah, you.
Supported Roe. And that's this idea that they're all against it is just ridiculous. And this is the guy who says the state should be able to have it. We're in a state where in 6 weeks, you don't even know whether you're pregnant or not, but you cannot see a doctor, and have him decide on what your circumstances are.
Have him?
whether you need help.
It's very
The
misogynist.
idea that states are able to
Assuming
do
the
this is
doctor's
like
male.
saying
Yeah, how dare
we're gonna
you.
turn
And you're
civil
also
rights
assuming
back
a
to the
gender.
states, that each state have a different rule.
As we all know,
Look,
is
for
not
so many young women who have been,
definable.
including a young woman who just
Nowadays.
was murdered, and he went to the funeral. The idea that she was murdered by an immigrant coming in. They talk
What?
about that, but here's the deal: there's a lot of young women who are being raped by their in-laws, by their
What?
spouses.
The fuck are you
brothers
talking
and
about on a
sisters,
national
by-
debate?
it's just ridiculous, and they can do nothing about it. And they try to arrest them when they cross state lines.
Thank you.
There have been many
Thank
young
you.
women murdered by the same people he allows to come across our border. We have a border that's the most dangerous place anywhere in the world, considered the most dangerous place anywhere in the world. And he opened
can't
it
come
up,
back.
and
Can't
these
say
killers
anything.
are coming into our country. And they are
Hamstringed by his
raping
own
and
rules.
killing women. And it's a terrible thing. As far as the abortion is concerned, it is now back with the states. The states are voting. In many cases, it's frankly a very liberal decision. In many cases, it's the opposite. But they're voting, and it's bringing it back to the vote of the people, which is what everybody wanted, including the founders, if they knew about this issue, which frankly they didn't.
Doesn't Biden's side love democracy?
Everybody wanted
Yeah.
broke
Democracy,
back. Ronald
having the
Reagan
most
wanted it
local
brought back. He
decision-making
wasn't able to get
possible
it.
Closest
on a
to your
contentious
family,
issue
Brought back.
is
closer
democracy.
than the government,
Presidents
closer than the
had
national
tried to
one.
get
It's
it back.
closer because it's
I was
state.
the one to do it. And
Only
again,
way to get
this
closer
gives
is
us
city
the vote of the people,
county.
and that's where they wanted it. Every legal scholar wanted it that way.
I didn't know Biden hated
Staying on
democracy.
the topic of abortion, President Biden, 7 states.
I thought he was trying to save it.
I'll let you do that. This is the same topic. 7 states have no legal restrictions.
smell something bad
on
up
how
there?
far into a
He looks
pregnancy
like,
a woman
Mr.
can obtain an
Magoo.
abortion.
God damn,
Do you
dude.
support any legal limits on how late
this
a
is
woman
gonna be
should be able
good.
to terminate a pregnancy?
I supported Roe v. Wade, which had 3 trimesters. The first time is between the woman and the doctor. Second time is between the doctor and an extreme situation. The third time is between the doctor.
That's not what a
and
trimester
between
is, you
the woman and the
dipshit.
state. The idea that the politicians, that the founders wanted the politicians to be the ones making decisions about women's health is ridiculous. That's the last. No politician is making that decision. A doctor should be.
What's
making
a
No,
woman?
but 9
But
rogue
what's a woman?
wizards
Hold on,
sitting
pause.
the
What's a
Supreme
woman
Court
then?
should.
Then what's a
And if I'm
woman
elected,
then?
I'm going to restore Roe v. Wade.
Your side
David.
can't define that. So
You're
how are we
asking
even
the
arguing
impossible
this?
Take the
philosophical
life
How are we
of
arguing
baby
this?
in the 9th month and even after birth, because some states, Democrat run, take it after birth. Again, the former governor of Virginia, put the baby down, then we decide what to do with it. So he's willing to, as we say, rip the baby out of the womb in the 9th month and kill the baby. Nobody wants that to happen.
wanna ease into the
Democrat or
topic, or-
Republican, nobody wants it to happen.
That is simply not true. That Roe v. Wade does not provide for that. That's not the circumstance. Only
Yes,
woman's
it
life
is.
is in danger. She's going to die. That's the only circumstance in which that can happen. But we are not for late-term abortion. Period. Period. Period.
Why was it happening
Roe
then
v.
in
Wade.
some
Period,
states?
period, because you were wishing for a
Abortion.
period?
You can do whatever you want, depending on the state. You can do whatever you want. We don't think that's a good thing. We think it's a radical thing. We think the Democrats are the radicals, not the Republicans.
For 51 years, that was the law. 51 years, constitutional scholarship said it was the right way to go. 51 years, and it was taken away because this guy put very conservative members on the Supreme Court. He takes credit for taking it away.
You mean he
What's he
did
gonna
his
do? What's he
constitutional
gonna do
duty,
if
which is appoint
if
justices and have them
MAGA
confirmed by the
Republicans,
Senate?
he
So
gets
he's at
and the
fault for
MAGA
other people's
Republicans control
decisions
the
that he
Congress,
appointed. I
and
got
they
it.
pass a universal ban on abortion, period, across the board at 6 weeks or 7 or 8 or 10 weeks, something very, very conservative. Is he going to sign that bill? I'll veto it. He'll sign it.
Thank you.
Let's turn now to the issue of immigration and border security. President Biden, a record number of migrants have illegally crossed the southern border on your watch. Overwhelming border states and overburdening cities such as New York and Chicago, and in some cases causing real safety and security concerns. Given that, why should voters trust you to solve this crisis?
Because we worked very hard to get a bipartisan agreement that not only changed all of that, it made sure that we are in a situation
Yeah, you're
where
trying to make sure they could
you
vote
had no
because you didn't want
circumstance where they
licenses
could come
or
across the border
registration to vote,
with
remember?
the number of border
it was
police there
racist.
are now. We significantly increased the number of asylum officers. By the way, the Border Patrol endorsed my position. In addition to that, we found ourselves in a situation where
They can do that?
when he was president, he was separating babies from their mothers, putting them in cages, making sure
Oh, that didn't happen
the family
No.
was
under
separated.
Obama.
That's
You know,
not-
the
but-
picture
And
of
it's
the
not happening
cages
now.
that were
Since
built
I
during the
changed
Obama
law,
administration that
what's
were then
happened?
attributed to
I've
the
changed
Trump
it in a way
administration. That didn't
now
happen.
You're in a situation where
Must
there are
think we have the
40%
memory of a
fewer
goldfish.
people coming across the border illegally. It's better
Well, they
when
don't
he left
respect us,
office.
Dan. That's
And I'm going to continue to move until we get the total ban on
Ban on-
the
but don't
total
forget-
initiative relative to what we're going to do with more border patrol and more asylum officers.
yeah, you guys are doing
Trump?
great.
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either. Look, we had the safest border in the history of our country. The border, all he had to do was leave it. All he had to do was leave it. He decided to open up our border, open up our country to people that are from prisons, people that are from mental institutions, insane asylum, terrorists. We have the largest number of terrorists coming into our country right now. All terrorists, all over the world, not just in South America, all over the world. They come from the
It's
Middle
only
East,
terrorists,
everywhere,
Trump.
all over the world. They're
Only
pouring in.
terrorists are coming
He
here.
was saying they're
This guy
coming from all
just
over the
left it
world.
open.
Right, I
And he didn't need
understand.
legislation.
But you can't
Sometimes he
all
gets his
Legislation
merds all
said
mixed
close the
up.
border. We had
He
the
gets a
safest
little
border
excited,
in
I
history.
get it.
In that final couple of months of my presidency, we had, according to Border Patrol, who is great, and by the way, who endorsed me for president.
Why
but
does
I won't say that.
fucking
who
Biden look like
endorsed me
he's
for
always
president.
butthurt when Trump's
Brandon,
talking?
Speak to him. But look,
He's
we had the
offended by
safest
most
border in
things.
history. Now we have the worst border in
Aside
history.
from money
There's
going
never
in
been
his
anything
pocket.
like it, and people are dying all over the place, including the people that are coming up in
Thank you,
caravans.
President Trump. President Biden?
The only terrorist who's done anything crossing the border is one who came along and killed three, and his administration killed an Al Qaeda person.
That's not true.
And his administration
That's
killed
not true at
three
all.
American soldiers. Killed three
What?
American soldiers. That's the only terrorist that's there.
Name
I'm
'em.
not saying there's
So
no
the
terrorists
women
have
that
the
have been
idea.
raped by
They're
Name 'em.
immigrants
prisoners.
have
They're
they don't
welcoming.
What
that
about
doesn't
the
count?
immigrants in
That's
New
simply
York
not true.
that
There's
flipped
no
off the
data
camera after
to
they
support
assaulted
what
a
he
cop
said.
and were
Once again,
let
he's
loose? What about
exaggerating,
them?
He's lying.
President Trump, staying on the topic of immigration, you've said that you're going to carry out, quote, the largest domestic deportation operation in American history, unquote. Does that mean that you will deport every undocumented immigrant in America, including those who have jobs, including those whose spouses are citizens, and including those who have lived here for decades? And if so, how will you do it?
Just 1 second. He said we killed three people. The people we killed are al-Baghdadi and Soleimani, the two greatest terrorists, biggest terrorists anywhere in the world.
We killed
They had a
terrorists,
huge
okay?
impact on everything, not just border, on everything. He's the one that killed people with the bad water, including hundreds of thousands of people dying,
Uh-oh, he's
and
gonna
also
charge across the
killing our
stage.
citizens when they come in. We are living right now in a rat's nest. They're killing our people in New York, in California, in every state in the union, because we don't have borders anymore. Every state is now a border.
This is
And because of his ridiculous,
deteriorating fast.
insane, and very stupid policies, people are coming in and they're killing our citizens at a level that we've never seen. We call it migrant crime. I call it Biden migrant crime. They're killing our citizens at a level that we've never
Clever.
seen
Not your
before.
best work,
and
Trump.
You're reading it like these
not-
three
it's no
incredible
fake
young
tapper,
girls
but
over the
we'll
last
go
few
with
days.
it.
One of them, I just spoke to the mother, and he just had the funeral for this girl. 12
didn't even
years
answer
old.
the question, by
This
the way.
is horrible what's taken
No,
place.
he did
What's
not.
taken place in
It's
our
like,
country.
fuck you, I'm taking
we're
over this show,
literally
fake tapper.
an uncivilized country now. He doesn't want it to be. He just doesn't know. He opened the borders. Nobody's ever seen anything like. And we have to get a lot of these people out, or we have to get them out fast because they're going to destroy our country. Just take a look at where they're living. They're living in luxury hotels in New York City and other places. Our veterans are on the street. They're dying because he doesn't care about our veterans. He doesn't care. He doesn't like the military at all. And he doesn't care about our veterans. Nobody been worse. I had the highest approval rating for veterans.
He snuck that one in under the elbow.
He has the worst. He's
Yep.
gotten rid of all the things that I approved. Choice that I got through Congress, all of the different things I approved, they abandoned. We had by far the highest, and now it's down in less than half because he's done all these great things that we did. And I think he did it just because I approved it, which is crazy. But he has killed so many people at our border by
Thank you,
allowing
President Trump.
all of these people to come in.
President
and it's a
Biden.
very sad day in America.
President Biden, you have the mic.
Every single thing he said is a lie. Every single
Well
one.
done.
For example,
Good
veterans
job.
are a hell of a lot better off since I passed the PACT Act. 1 million of them now have insurance, and their families have it. Their families have it because what happened, whether it was Agent Orange or burn pits, they're all being covered now. And he opposed, his group opposed that. We're
Agent
also in a
Orange
situation
was
where
back
we have
in
great respect
fucking
for veterans.
Vietnam.
My son spent a year in Iraq, living right next to one of those burn pits, came back with stage 4 glioblastoma. I was recently in France
here he goes,
for
bringing up his
D-Day,
son again.
and I spoke all about those heroes that died. I went to the World War II cemetery.
Was that
World
before
War
or
II
after
refused
his uncle
to
was a
go there.
cannibal?
He was standing with his 4-star
No,
general,
eaten by
and
cannibals.
he told me,
Oh,
"I don't
that's
wanna go
right.
in there
My
because
bad.
a bunch of
In
losers
a
and suckers." My
country
son
that
was
never
not a
had
loser,
cannibals.
was not a sucker.
Don't forget that.
You're the sucker. You're the loser.
President Trump.
Oh, someone's losing their
First of all, that was a made-up quote, suckers and losers. They made it up. It was in a third-rate magazine that's failing, like many of these magazines. He made that
Here
up.
it is.
He put it in commercials. We've notified him. We
hear
had
the engine
19
stalling
people
day?
that said I didn't say it. And think of this.
You feel
Who
the-
would say
the wing
I'm at a
shuddering?
cemetery or I'm talking about our veterans? Because nobody's taken better care. I'm so glad this came up, and he brought it up. There's nobody that's taken better care of our soldiers than I have. To think that I would, in front of generals and others, say suckers and losers. We have 19 people that said it was never said by me. It was made up by him, just like Russia was made up, just like the 51 intelligence agents are made up, just like the new thing with the 16 economists are talking. It's the same thing. 51 intelligence agents said that the laptop was Russia disinformation. It wasn't. That came from his son, Hunter. It wasn't Russia disinformation. He made up the suckers and losers, so he should apologize to me right now.
4-star general standing your side was on your staff who said you said it, period. That's number one. And number two, the idea that I have to apologize to you for anything along the line. We've done more for veterans than any president has in American history. American history. And they now are in their
American
family.
history
The
twice.
only sacred obligation we have as a country is to care for our veterans when they come home and their families.
How'd
and
you do
equip
it?
them when they go to war.
What did you do?
That's what we're doing.
The FACT
That's
Act?
what the VA is doing now. They're doing more for veterans than ever before in our history.
All right, thank you so much.
To the topic of foreign policy, I want to begin with Russia's war against Ukraine, which is now in its third year. Former President Trump, Russian President Vladimir Putin says he'll only end this war if Russia keeps the Ukrainian territory it has already claimed and Ukraine abandons its bid to join NATO. Are Putin's terms acceptable to you?
First of all, our veterans and our soldiers can't stand this guy. They can't stand him. They think he's the worst
He's not
commander
letting
in chief,
go.
if that's what you call him, that we've ever had. They can't stand him. So let's get that straight. And they like me more than just about any of them. And that's based on every single bit of information. As far as Russia and Ukraine, if we had a real president, a president that knew, that was respected by Putin, he would have never invaded Ukraine. A lot of people are dead
Answer
right
the
now,
question,
much more than
Trump.
people know. You know, they talk about numbers. You can double those numbers, maybe
He's
triple
not
those
going to.
numbers.
He knows how to
He
entertain.
did
He's
nothing
not-
to stop
he's
it. In
not
fact,
up
I
here
think he
to fucking
encouraged
answer
Russia
questions.
from going in. I'll tell you what happened. He was so bad with Afghanistan. It was such a horrible embarrassment, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. That when Putin watched that and he saw the incompetence, that he should have fired those generals, like I fired the one that you mentioned. And so he's got no love lost, but he should have fired those generals. No general got fired for the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan, where we left billions of dollars of equipment behind. We lost 13 beautiful soldiers, and 38 soldiers were obliterated. And by the way, we left people behind, too. We left American citizens behind. When Putin saw that, he said, you know what? I think we're going to go in and maybe take my... This was his dream. I talked to him about it, his dream. The difference is he never would have invaded Ukraine. Never. Just like Israel would have never been invaded in a million years by Hamas. You know why? Because Iran was broke with me. I wouldn't let anybody do business with them. They ran out of money. They were broke. They had no money for Hamas. They had no money for anything. No money for terror. That's why you had no terror at all during my
No terror.
The whole world is blowing up under him.
He doesn't sound New Yorker until he says
President
terror,
Biden?
and then all of a sudden it's terror.
Never heard so much malarkey in my whole life.
Oh,
Malarkey. That deserves a
malarkey.
drink.
Let's take the last one first.
Slange.
Iran attacked American troops, caused brain damage for a number of these troops, and he did nothing about it.
And
No-
he knows
no-
something about brain damage. Let me
Brain
tell
damage
you.
for a
They're
number
just
of
having
troops?
headaches.
What the
That's all
fuck?
it is. He didn't do a thing when the attack
Listen,
took
David.
place, number one. Number two.
It's brain damage.
The NFL does that every year. We let him do it fucking 16 weeks and 17 weeks, like, and we celebrate
Number
it.
three,
Like, what are you talking
I
about,
found
brain
myself in a
damage?
situation where, if you take a look at what Trump did in Ukraine,
What's he looking down at?
this guy told Trump, do whatever you want, and do whatever you want, and that's exactly what Trump did.
Who
What?
told Trump?
Putin encouraged him
To what?
do whatever you
Oh.
want, and he went in. And listen to what he said when he went in. He
My
was gonna
face
take
when
Kyiv
Biden
in 5
talks.
days, remember, because it's part of the old Soviet Union. That's what he wanted to reestablish, Kyiv. And he, in fact, didn't do it at all. He wasn't able to get
It's
it
Kyiv,
done.
yeah.
And they've lost thousands and thousands of troops, 500,000 troops.
What?
President Trump,
500,000
back to you.
what?
For 1 minute, I just want to go back to my original question, which is, are Putin's terms acceptable to you? Keeping the territory of
Still haven't
Ukraine.
answered that.
No, they're not acceptable. But look, this is a war that never should have started. If we had a leader in this war, he led everybody along. He's given $200 billion now or more to Ukraine. He's given $200 billion. That's a lot of money. I don't think there's ever been anything
a
like
lot
it.
of money.
Every time that Zelensky comes to this country,
gonna
he
be a
walks
lot
away
of
with $60
damage.
billion. He's the greatest salesman ever. And I'm not knocking him. I'm not knocking anything. I'm only saying the money that we're spending on this war, and we shouldn't be spending, it should have never happened. I will have that war settled between Putin and Zelensky as president-elect before I take office on January 20th. I'll have that war settled. People being killed so needlessly, so stupidly, and I will get it settled, and I'll get it settled fast before I take office.
President Biden, you have a minute.
The fact is that Putin is a war criminal. He's killed thousands and thousands of people. And he
War
has
criminal
made
is
one
not the
thing
path
clear.
American
He
president
wants
should be wanting to go
reestablish
down.
What was part of the Soviet Empire.
Pot and
Not
kettle.
just a piece.
By
He
the way,
wants
was
all of
the
Ukraine.
Afghanistan war
That's what he
sanctioned
wants.
by the
And then
UN?
you think he'll
Was
stop
it an
there?
illegal war or was
you
it
think he'll
legal?
stop when if he takes Ukraine?
Yeah.
What do you think happens to
And
Poland?
was
What do you
he-
think of Belarus?
Did he?
What do you
Was he
think happens
vice
to those
president
NATO
for
countries?
a lot of
And
that?
so if you want a war, you ought to find out what he's going to do, because if in fact he does what he says and walks away, and by the way, all that money we give Ukraine are from weapons we make here in the United States. We give them the weapons, not the money at this point. And our NATO allies.
So you just
produce
admitted
as
to
much
washing the money that we give you.
funding for Ukraine as we have. That's
You
why
just admitted
that's why we're
to
strong.
giving the
you.
taxpayer
Moving on
money
to the
to
Middle
Lockheed
East.
Martin.
In October, Hamas attacked Israel, killing more than 1,000 people and taking hundreds of hostages. Among those held and thought to still be alive are 5 Americans. Israel's response has killed thousands of Palestinians and created a humanitarian crisis in Gaza. President Biden, you've put forward a proposal to resolve this conflict, but so far Hamas has not released the remaining hostages, and Israel is continuing its military offensive in Gaza.
Looks fucking
So what
just deer in the
additional
headlights.
You
leverage
guys
will
got
you
any more of that
use
meth?
to get
I'm starting to
Hamas
run
and
low.
Israel to
Need a
end the
tap.
war? You have 2 minutes.
Number one,
Jake, get over here.
everyone from the United Nations Security Council straight through to the G7 to the Israelis and Netanyahu himself have endorsed the plan I put forward. Which has 3 stages to it. The first stage is trade the hostages for a ceasefire. Second phase is a ceasefire with additional conditions. The third phase is the end of the war. The only one who wants the war to continue is Hamas. Number one. They're the only
But
ones
how are you
standing
going to
up.
do that?
We're still pushing hard to get them to accept. In the meantime, what's happened? In Israel, we're finding that the only thing I've denied Israel was 2,000-pound bombs. They don't work very well in populated areas. They kill a lot of innocent people. We're providing Israel all
As
the
if that
weapons they
stopped
need
them
when they
so
need
far.
And by the way, I'm the guy that organized the world against Iran when they had a full-blown intercontinental ballistic missile attack on Israel. No one was hurt. No one Israeli was accidentally killed, and it just stopped. We saved Israel. We are the biggest producer of support for Israel of anyone in
Fucking
the world.
Trump.
And so they're 2 different things.
Did I
Hamas cannot
did I miss
allow it to be
the time
continued.
where
We can
I
Iran
guess he
continue
caught the
our-
ballistic
our
missile
target
himself and
struck Israel with
he's
a
conflating Marvel's
And by the way, they've been greatly weakened, Hamas.
Avengers,
Greatly
the
weakened.
first one.
They should be eliminated.
He's confusing himself with
Be
Tony
careful for
Stark.
what using certain weapons among population centers.
Oh my god.
I flew that ICBM
Keep
back
going
up
for 1
Thanos'
second.
ass.
We have an ocean separating us. The European nations together have spent 100 billion, or maybe more than that, less than us. Why doesn't he call them and say, you got to put up your money like I did with NATO? I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. The Secretary General of NATO said Trump did the most incredible job I've ever seen. They wouldn't have any. They were going out of business. We were spending almost 100% of the money was paid by us. He didn't do that. He's getting all. You got to ask these people to put up the money. We're over $100 billion more spent, and it has a bigger impact on them because of location, because we have an ocean in between. You got to ask them. As far as Israel and Hamas, Israel's the one that wants to go. He said the only one that wants to keep going is Hamas. Actually, Israel is the one, and you should let him go and let him finish the job. He doesn't want to do it. He's become like a Palestinian, but they don't like him because he's a very bad Palestinian. He's a weak one.
President Biden, you have a minute.
And there's going to be no mention at all about the Israeli government knowing it was happening, letting it go, using it as a pretext to get what they want. None of that. Not going to be mentioned at all.
It may be a big ocean, but we're ever able to avoid a war in Europe, a major war in Europe? What happens if, in fact, you have Putin continue to go into NATO? We have an Article 5 agreement. Attack on one is attack on all. You want to start the nuclear war he keeps talking about, go ahead. Let Putin go in and control Ukraine.
Why
and
is
then move
he
on to
whispering,
Poland
number
and other
one, and
places.
number two, he's the
Just
one that
what
said that
happens
I'm not
then.
going to allow
He has
American
no
weapons to
idea what the
be
hell he's talking
used
about.
in
And by
Ukraine
the
because
way,
that's
I
going to
got
light up
50
World War
other
III, and then he
nations
just
around
said
the
that
world
you can
to
use
support
American
Ukraine,
weapons.
including
It happened.
and South
We're
Korea.
doing it.
Just last week, it happened. Russia
And
has
he's
vowed
acting-
retaliation
He's
because
acting, and then we have submarines off our coast because of that shit.
Been able to be contained just to Europe.
President Trump, just to
Jesus
follow up,
Christ.
would you support the creation
Well,
of an independent
well done holding him
Palestinian state
accountable
in order
for
to
any
achieve
of his
peace in the
answers they're
region?
seeing in,
I'd
by the
have
way.
to see, but before we
great
do that,
journalism.
the problem we have is that we spend all the money. So they kill us on trade. I made great trade deals with the European nations because if you add them up, they're about the same size economically. Their economy is about the same size as the United States. And they were no cars, they don't want anything that we have, but we're supposed to take their cars, their food, their everything, their agriculture. I changed that. But the big thing I changed is they don't want to pay. And the only reason that he can play games with NATO is because I got them to put up hundreds of billions of dollars. I said, and he's right about this, I said, no, I'm not going to support NATO if you don't pay. They asked me that question, would you guard us against Russia at a very secret meeting of the 28 states at that time, nations at that time. And they said, no, if you don't pay, I won't do that. And you know what happened? Billions and billions of dollars came flowing in the next day and the next months.
Billions and billions.
Now we're in the same
Billions.
position. We're paying everybody's
Thank you.
bills.
According to
Let's turn
Trump,
the issue of
NATO after that
democracy.
conference.
Former President Trump, I want to ask you about January 6, 2021. After you rallied your supporters that day, some of them stormed the Capitol to stop the.
Well, that's a bit of a loaded
You
question,
guys have
isn't
been
it?
fucking. You guys have had
President,
your
you swore
dicks
an
hard
oath
for
to,
this
quote,
question for
preserve,
about
protect,
4
and
years now.
defend, unquote, the Constitution. What do you say to voters who believe that you violated that oath through your actions and inaction on January 6th and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I don't think too many believe that. And let me tell you about January 6th. On January 6th, we had a great border. Nobody coming through, very few.
Fuck.
On January 6th, we were energy independent. On January 6th, we had the lowest taxes ever. We had the lowest regulations ever. On January 6th, we were respected all over the world. All over the world, we were respected. And then he comes in, and we're now laughed at. We're like a bunch of stupid people. What happened to the United States' reputation under this man's leadership
Trump is
horrible.
not doing himself any
Weaponization,
favors
which I'm
here.
sure at some point you'll
He
be
needs to
talking
meet
about.
that
answered
shit
the question.
head
He goes
on
after
and
his
call it
political
the
opponent 'cause he
bullshit
can't beat him
narrative that
fair
it
and
is.
square.
You have 80 seconds left. My question was, what do you say to those voters who believe that you violated your constitutional oath through your actions and inaction on January 6, 2021, and worry that you'll do it again?
Well, I didn't say that to anybody. I said peacefully and patriotically. And Nancy Pelosi, if you just watched the news
There
from
it
2
is.
days ago, on tape to her daughter, who's a documentary filmmaker, they say, she's
Filmmaker.
saying, oh, no, it's my responsibility. I was responsible for this. Because I offered her 10,000 soldiers or National Guard, and she turned them down. And the mayor in writing, by the way, the mayor, in writing, turned it down, the mayor of D.C. They turned it down. I offered 10,000 because I could see, I had virtually nothing to do. They asked me to go make a speech. I could see what was happening. Everybody was saying they're going to be there on January 6th. They're going to be there. And I said, you know what? There's a lot of people coming. You could feel it. You could feel it too, and you could feel it. And I said, they ought to have some National Guard or whatever. And I offered it to her. And she now admits that she turned it down. And it was the same day she was, I don't know, she can't be very happy with her daughter because it made her into a liar. She said, I take full responsibility for January 6th.
President Biden?
That's interesting to get hit on.
He encouraged those folks to go up on Capitol Hill, number one. I sat in that dining room off the Oval Office. He sat there for 3 hours watching, begging, being begged by his vice president and a number of his colleagues on the Republican side as well to do something, to call for a stop, to end it. Instead, they talked about these people being patriots and great patrons of America. In fact, he says he'll now forgive them for what they've done. They've been convicted. He says he wants to commute
As
their
he should.
sentences.
They've been railroaded by the weaponized justice system.
He went to every single court in the
Injustice
nation.
system.
I don't know how many cases, scores of cases, including the Supreme Court, and they said, no, this guy is responsible for doing what was done. He did do a damn thing, and these people should be in jail.
Who's he talking
And
about?
they
Ray
should
Epps, the
be in
FBI
jail,
plant who
being
got,
held accountable.
slapped on
He
the
wants to
wrist
get them
and
all
nothing
out.
happened to
And now
him?
he says if he loses again,
The
such as
only
Iowa
one on
is,
camera who
that there'll be
said
a
that we
bloodbath.
should go into the Capitol
President Biden.
building
President Trump?
out of hundreds of thousands of
They've
people?
done to some people that are so innocent. You ought to be ashamed of yourself. What you have done, how you've destroyed the lives of so many people. When they ripped down Portland, when they ripped down
Oh, here he goes. He's going
many
into
other
BLM.
cities. You go to Minnesota, Minneapolis, what they've done there with the fires all over the city. If I didn't bring in the National Guard, that city would have been destroyed. When you look at all of the
Biden and the
they
Democrats
took
during
over
the
big
BLM
chunks of
riots.
Seattle. I was all set to bring in the
They're
National
peaceful.
Guard. They
They're
heard
peaceful.
That. They saw them coming and they left immediately.
Don't mind that
What
burning
he
building
said
and all those
about
dead bodies.
this
Don't
whole
mind that.
subject is
But if
so
one
off.
Republican shoots a
Peacefully
couple of
patriotic. One other
pedophiles
thing.
in those crowds, by God, we're going to hold
The
them all in court
Unselect
for getting
Committee,
attacked by
which
them,
is
by the way.
Basically, two horrible Republicans that are all gone now, out of office, and Democrats, all Democrats.
Oh, I shouldn't have said
they
that. We
destroyed
might have got kicked
and
off of
deleted
YouTube on
all
that
of
one.
the information they found because they found
I
out
still
we
got the
were
green
right.
check. I think
We
we're
were
good.
right. And they deleted and destroyed all of the information. They should go to jail for that. If a Republican did that, they'd go to
Thank
jail.
you, President Trump. President Biden, I want to give you a minute.
The only person on this stage is a convicted felon is the man I'm looking
Ah,
at.
there we go.
Oh,
The fact
because
of the
he
matter
has the
is,
mental acuity to be
he's-
convicted.
what
Don't
he's
forget
telling you is
that.
simply not
Because you
true.
weaponized your
The fact is
DOJ. and had him go handhold the New York AG to
Everything that he says after
bring that
this is
bullshit
a
case with no
Like, when you get
legitimate
fucking
charges.
The idea
questioned
that they didn't
by-
kill somebody, just went in and broke down doors, broke the windows, occupied offices, turned
broken
over
windows,
desks,
you say.
turned over statues. The idea that those people are patriots.
What was the name of the guy that questioned him?
When I asked him the first
Come on,
two
man.
debates we had, the
Come on,
debates we
man.
had
But no,
first time
the
around,
guy that questioned him
I
from
said,
the
"Well, then denounce
Attorney
the
General's
cowboy."
office that
He said,
came
"No, I'll tell
and
them to
gave his
stand
testimony
by."
that said that he's not
The idea
capable to
he's
be
refusing to, will
or he
we
shouldn't be
denounce these guys?
held accountable
We
because
denounce
he's
the
not
people we're
mentally
talking
fit
about
to
now?
be held
We
accountable.
denounce
Which,
the
Yeah.
people
What was his
who
name
attacked
again?
that Capitol.
I don't remember the AG that said it, but yeah.
I'm going to give you a minute, President Trump, for a follow-up question I have. After
No.
a jury convicted
No, let him
you of 34 felonies last month, you said if reelected, you would, quote, have every right to go after, unquote, your political opponents. You just talked about members of the Select Committee on January 6th going to jail.
As they've
And your
been
main
going
political
after him.
opponent is
Yeah.
standing on stage with you
Not that
tonight.
tit for
Can you
tat
clarify exactly
makes it
what
right,
means
but
about you feeling you have every
what do
right
we
to
say
go
on
after
here all
let's
the time,
drop
Dane?
the pin at the
Well, I
start
said
of the
my
timeline.
retribution is going to be success. We're going to make this country successful again, because right now it's a failing nation. My retribution is going to be success. But when he talks about a convicted felon, his son is a convicted felon at a very high level. His son is convicted, going to be convicted probably numerous other times. Should have been convicted before, but his Justice Department let the statute of limitations lapse on the most important things. But he could be a convicted felon as soon as he gets out of office. Joe could be a convicted felon with all of the things that he's done. He's done horrible things. All of the death caused at the border, telling the Ukrainian people that we're going to want $1 billion or you change the prosecutor. Otherwise, you're not getting $1 billion. If I ever said that, that's quid pro quo. That we're not going to do anything. We're not going to give you $1 billion unless you change your prosecutor, having to do with his son. This man is a criminal. This man, you're lucky. You're lucky. I did nothing wrong. We'd have a system that was rigged and disgusting. I did nothing wrong.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you have said, I'm coming right to you, sir. You want to respond?
Look at
Go
me.
ahead, I'll give you a minute to respond.
Jake Tapper's like,
The
hey, Evan.
idea that I did anything wrong relative to what
he's
you're
not paying
talking about
attention.
is outrageous. It's simply a lie, number one. Number two,
Outrageous.
the idea that you have a right to seek retribution against any American just because you're president is wrong. It's simply wrong. No president's ever spoken like that before.
It's exactly what you've been doing.
You've done it. You didn't speak about it. You just did it.
Times that you are still charged.
Your
If you
actions
think
are
about
speaking
civil
far
penalties,
louder than his words.
Billions of dollars do you owe in civil penalties?
Oh my goodness.
For molesting a woman in public, for doing
Molesting a
whole
woman in
range of
public.
Things,
Your
of
daughter
having
said you
sex
took
with a
showers
porn
with
star
her in her
while
book.
you might-
Yeah.
while your wife
I
is
don't think
pregnant.
molesting is the route you want to go down,
You
my
don't
guy.
want to go with that.
Bring up the
Captain-
daughter, Trump. Bring it up.
Captain Head Smeller.
I didn't have sex with a porn star, number one. Number two, that was a case that was
And who
started and moved.
cares if
They
you
moved
did?
a high-ranking official, a DOJ, into the Manhattan DA's office to start that case. That case is going to be appealed and won. We had a very terrible judge, a horrible judge, Democrat. The prosecutor were all high-ranking Democrats, appointed people, and both the civil and the criminal.
The
He
judge's
basically
daughter
went
literally
after his
raised
political
money on
opponent
that case.
because he thought it was
Talk
gonna
about a
damage me.
fucking
But when the
conflict of
public
interest.
Found out about these cases because they understand it better than he does. He has no idea what these cases are. But when they found out about these
He
cases,
has no
you know
idea what he had for
the
breakfast.
poll numbers went up way up. You know that because you're reporting it. And we took in more money in the last 2 weeks than we've ever taken in the history of any campaign. I don't think any campaign has ever taken. Hundreds of millions of dollars came pouring in because the public knows it's a scam and it's a guy that's after his political opponent because he can't win fair and square.
Thank you, President Trump. President Biden, you
Trump
have
or
I mean,
Biden,
that
Biden,
was-
Trump and his MAGA
Biden
That was a
accusing
solid
Trump
cross.
of going after his
American
political
democracy.
opponents.
That
Do
one
you
found the
believe
chin.
that the tens
I
of
think
millions of Americans
Biden might be a
who are
little
likely
staggered
to
on that
vote
one.
for President Trump will be voting against American democracy?
The more they know about what he's done, yes. The more they know about what he's done. And there's a lot more coming. He's got a lot of cases down the road coming around.
Does he?
He's got a whole range of issues he has to face.
That's
I don't know
interesting.
what the juries will do, but I do know he has a real problem. And so the fact that, could you ever think you hear any president say that I'm going to seek retribution? Do you ever hear any presidents say that I thought Hitler had some good ideas? What got me involved to run in the first place after my son had died, I decided
Yeah.
in Iraq, because of Iraq, I said I wasn't going to run again. until I saw what happened in Charlottesville, Virginia. People coming out of the woods carrying swastikas.
Oh,
torches,
you
torches.
sacrificed so much
And
for
so
us,
they sang
Joe.
this
Thank
little
you.
file. They sang
You're a
when-
good man, Joe.
back in Germany. And and the young woman got killed. I spoke to the mother, and they asked him. They said,
What's her name?
What do you think of those people? The people the ones who got killed, the one who tried to stop it, and the ones he said, I think they're fine people on both sides. What
There
American
are
president?
fine people.
Snopes just came out a
Once
week
he's
or two
coming out of
ago and
fields
said that
carrying
was a
torches,
completely
singing
Snopes
the same man as another
Snopes
carrying swastikas.
literally said that that
people.
was a bullshit
guy
line
says
that
that
Trump
he's
never
sent-
said.
But we're missing the
know what
point.
they
He's
are.
sending billions
thinks
of
what
dollars
he's
to
done,
people
that's
that
what
wear
he said.
swastikas while they're
This guy
fighting
has no
Russians.
sense of
Like, what are we talking about?
President Trump.
Literally wearing swastikas right now.
Literally, and they had to ask him
like
not
that,
to. But go ahead,
because
keep
when you see
going.
the sentence, it said 100% exoneration on this. So he just keeps it going. He says he ran because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of Charlottesville. He ran because it was his last chance. He's not equipped to be president. You know it, and I know it. It's ridiculous. We have a debate. We're trying to justify his presidency. His presidency, he's without question the worst president, the worst presidency in the history of our country. We shouldn't be having a debate about it. There's nothing to debate. He made up the Charlottesville story, and you'll see it's debunked all over the place. Every anchor every reasonable anchor has debunked it. And just the other day, it came out where it was fully debunked. It's a nonsense story. He knows that, and he didn't run because of Charlottesville. He used that as an excuse to run.
President Biden.
and debunked. It happened. All you have to do is listen to what was said at the time.
Where are you
And the
looking?
idea that somehow that's the only reason
Where
I
are
ran.
you looking?
I ran because I was worried a guy like this guy could get elected. If he thought they were good people coming out of that forest, carrying those woods, carrying those torches, then he didn't
Coming out of
deserve
the
to be
forest, the
president.
woods, the
Didn't
torches,
deserve to be
the
president
carrying
at
that.
all.
For
The
the
idea
ogre that was there
he's
for
talking
Shrek? Are we
about
hunting
is
down
being
Shrek now?
fabricated.
Right behind
It's all
Smokey the
going on.
Bear.
It's all happening generously.
Put
It's
out
all
your
people
put out your
breaking-
fires.
It's not people occupying it. His own vice president. Look, there's a reason why 40 of his 44 top cabinet officers refused to endorse him this time. His vice president hasn't endorsed him this time. So
You know what
why?
Trump should do?
Why?
Ask
You
him to
know why?
name 5 of
So
his own cabinet
why are they not
officers.
endorsing
Biden,
him?
right now.
Thank you,
5
President
people
Biden.
in your
We're gonna be
cabinet.
right back
Go.
with more from the CNN presidential debate.
All right, I'm gonna take a piddle break. You catch him up on everything they've. missed.
Yeah.
I need to
Yeah,
go
just
throw up.
a couple points to hit. I was writing them down as they were going, trying to let them talk as much as possible. Trump on this whole tariffs thing and how it's going to be paid for by the other countries and blah, blah, blah. That's not how tariffs work. That is going to increase costs because it's either going to arbitrarily reduce the amount of supply of whatever is being tariffed in this country. I think one point he was making about how he was going to put 100% tariff on Chinese cars, and so those cars don't come in the country. Well, lower supply, demand stays the same, then the price increases for the cars that are in this country, whether they're made in the U.S. or Europe or anywhere besides China. So no, when the tariffs go up, those costs are always passed on to the consumer. So this idea that Trump is going to raise tariffs and it's going to make the U.S. government a bunch of money and it's not going to cost the American citizens a dime is just completely economically illiterate. On the tax cuts, Trump's point about lowering taxes but bringing in more money, that sounds counterintuitive, but that is actually exactly what happened. And there's a concept in economics called the Laffer curve. And the Laffer curve is essentially the proposition that you can only increase taxes so much before you start to have a fall off in revenue because people evade the taxes. As Trump was pointing out in terms of corporations, they move out of the country, they offshore in order to avoid those taxes, etc. So it's not like a linear progression where you can just increase taxes forever and revenue is going to go up forever. The curve, the reason why it's called the Laffer curve, it was created by economist Art Laffer, is eventually you reach an equilibrium of your taxes where if you go higher than that, your revenue is going to start to fall off. So yes, you can have a reduction in taxes but an increase of revenue for exactly the reasons that Trump stated, is that some corporations started to come back. They found more reason to make money in America and keep it here and pay taxes on that, and so revenue went up. And that's actually borne out by the federal revenue has increased every year since 2009. So throughout the Obama presidency, the Trump presidency, and into today, federal revenues have constantly increased. So this idea that the rich aren't paying their fair share, or that, you know, the federal government is being starved for revenue when Trump had tax cuts, is completely inaccurate. The whole rape and abortion thing, again, you can call this my ideological perspective on it or whatever, but in no other area of society would we ever justify punishing a third party for the bad actions of somebody else. So the rapist is a bad person. They committed a crime on the mother. A baby happened to come out of it. How we jump from the rapist did a bad thing, so the baby deserves to die, again, if that's part of your moral compass, fine. I would just challenge you to apply that unilaterally across the board. When one third party does something bad, let's punish it a completely separate and independent person that had nothing to do with it. And last thing, on Israel on October 7th, we kind of talk about it, in real time, but just wanted to do it without them talking. It is well established at multiple levels that the Israeli government not only supported Hamas in the years leading up to October 7th because they wanted an excuse not to pursue a two-state solution, they had intelligence from Egypt and within Israel that October 7th was going to happen, and chose not to do anything about it because it gave them the pretext to do exactly what they're doing, which is committing genocide in Gaza.
Your time's up, Dane. We're back in.
While black
pretty good.
unemployment dropped
Right on
to a
time.
record low under your presidency, black families still earned far less than white families. Black mothers are still 3 times more likely to die from pregnancy-related causes, and black Americans are imprisoned at 5 times the rate of white Americans.
What
What do you
bill
say
would
to
have made
black
that
voters
possible,
who
by the
are
way?
disappointed that you haven't made more progress?
Ask that question.
They acknowledge they made a lot of progress, number one. The fact of the matter is there's more small black businesses that have been started than any time in history. Number two, the wages of black unemployment is the lowest level it's been in a long, long time. Number three, we're providing housing for black Americans and dealing with the segregation that exists among these corporations that collude to keep people.
They didn't
out
top
of
them off at
houses.
the end of the
In
segment.
addition to that, we find that the impact of
Started to get the speed wobbles.
the choice that black families have to make relative to child care is incredibly difficult. When we did the first major piece of legislation in the past, I was
The
able to
choice
reduce
that all parents have to
black
make for child care
child
is
care
incredibly
costs.
difficult.
I cut them in half. We got to make sure we provide for child care costs. We got to make sure, because when you provide those child care protections,
And where's it going to go?
How do you differentiate between whether you're lowering childcare costs for black versus
people
white,
and then
Asian, or
another one.
anywhere
Yeah,
else?
that's what I'm saying. Like, if you lower it for one, someone else has to pick up the
You have
pieces. Where are you going to
49
put that one?
seconds left. What do you say to black voters who are disappointed with the progress so far?
I say I don't blame them for being disappointed. Inflation is still hurting them badly. For example,
Oh, just them.
And nobody else.
idea that any black family, first-time home buyer, should get a $10,000 tax credit. to
What
be
about a
able to
white
buy their
family
first
that's a
home
first-time home buyer?
So they can get started.
That's
And
institutional
make sure we're in a
racism,
situation
Joe.
where
To say that one group of people based
can't
on no
afford it.
criteria other than their race should get a benefit
Kinda
that
like,
everybody else doesn't.
you know,
That's racism.
They said that they can't even figure out how to get driver's licenses. Remember?
Anything having to do with volunteers.
That's why you need to allow.
Or know where their DMV is, or their voting booth,
That
or
was on you.
how to check a
You
box.
can't blame Trump for that one, Bubba.
Millions
That was
have
on you.
benefited from that. And we're going to do a whole lot more for black families.
Thank you,
Excellent.
President
I'm
Trump.
sure you will.
And he caused the inflation. He's blaming inflation, and he's right. It's been very bad. He
Trump,
caused the inflation.
get
It's
off the
killing black
inflation
families
thing,
and
dude. You are
Hispanic
just as
families
at
and
fault
just
for
about
it.
everybody. It's killing people. They can't buy groceries anymore. They can't. You look at the cost of food, where it's doubled and tripled.
Does anybody
and
want to win this,
quadrupled.
or is it just
They
a
can't
race
live.
to the
They're
bottom?
not living anymore.
Like,
He caused this inflation. I gave him a country with essentially no inflation. It was perfect. It was so good. All he had to do is leave it alone. He destroyed it with his Green New Scam and all this
Green
money
New
that's being
Scam.
thrown out the window. He caused inflation. As sure as you're sitting there, the fact is that his big kill on the black people is the millions of people that he's allowed to come in through the border. They're taking black jobs now. And it could be 18, it could be 19, and even 20 million people. They're taking black jobs and they're taking Hispanic jobs, and you haven't seen it yet, but you're going to see something that's going to be the worst in our history.
Thank you.
That is a
President Biden.
major
There was no
problem
inflation
for those
when I became
communities.
president. You know why? The economy was flat on its back.
What?
15% unemployment. He decimated the economy. Absolutely decimated the economy. That's why there was no inflation.
2020
at
is
the
the
time.
height of COVID.
There were no jobs.
you
We provided
forced us all to go
thousands of
home.
millions of jobs for individuals.
Thousands
for
and
all
millions
communities,
and
including
billions and
minority communities.
gazillions.
We made sure that they had
Kind of like
health
the amount of
insurance.
money that I've
We
sent to
have
Ukraine
covered-
for no
the
reason
ACA
whatsoever.
has increased. I made sure that
Other than
there
the war.
$8,000 per person in a family to get written off for health care. But this guy wants to eliminate that. They tried 50 times. He wants to get rid of the ACA
50
again.
times.
And they're going to try again if they win. We find ourselves in a position where the idea that we're not doing any, we put more police on the street than any administration has. He wants to cut the cops. We're providing for
What?
equity.
He wants to
Equity
cut
in
Your
the
side
cops.
was the defund the police.
There's a lot
What the
going
fuck
on.
are you
Am
talking
I?
about?
Is this
Am I-
opposite day?
By his tremendous amount
Exactly.
of the pandemic.
Thank you. Another persistent
You
challenge.
just say the thing that you need to say in the moment, but you
2023
expect us
was
to
the
forget all the
hottest
shit
year
that you
in
set up to
recorded
it?
History, and communities across the country are confronting
People
the
don't forget.
devastating effects of extreme heat, intensifying wildfires, stronger hurricanes, and rising sea levels. Former President Trump,
Former
vowed
President
to
Trump,
end
are you
your
gonna control the
opponent's
weather when
climate
you get in?
initiatives, but will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
Well, let me just go back to what he said about the police, how close the police are to him. Almost every police group in the nation from every state is supporting Donald J. Trump. Almost every
Close your
police
mouth,
group.
Biden.
And what he's done to the black population
Fuck.
is horrible, including the fact that for 10 years he called them super predators. We can't, in the 1990s, we can't forget that. Super predators was his name, and he called it to them for 10, and they've taken great offense at it, and now they see it happening. But when they see what I did for criminal justice reform and for the historically black colleges and universities, where I funded them and got them all funded, and the opportunity zones with Tim, as you know, Tim Scott was incredible. He did a great job, great senator from South Carolina. He came to me with the idea, and it was a great idea. It's one of the most successful economic development acts ever in the country, opportunity zones. And the biggest beneficiary are blacks. And that's why we have the best numbers with them in maybe ever. They're saying ever. I read this morning where ever, the best
I don't
numbers.
know. Maybe
They're
ever.
saying-
He's lost much of the black population because he's done a horrible job for black people. He's also done a horrible job for Hispanics. But wait till you see these millions of people pouring into our country, and they're going to take the jobs, and it's already started, and you haven't seen anything yet. It's a disaster.
You've 38 seconds left. President Trump, will you take any action as president to slow the climate crisis?
So I want absolutely immaculate clean water, and I want absolutely clean air.
Perfect. We
and
all do.
had it.
Good.
We had
I
18
like mine
we had
super
the best
sludgy.
numbers
And
Actually, I want a little
my-
lead in mine. I'm too smart. I want to be dumbed
all
down on
forms of
Tish.
energy, all forms, everything. And yet, during my 4 years, I had the best environmental numbers ever. And my top environmental people gave me that statistic just before I walked on the stage, actually.
I don't know where the hell he's been. The idea
Well done.
that anything he
Using
says is
expletives.
true. I've passed the most extensive climate change legislation in history. In history, we find ourselves, and by the way,
Repeat it.
black colleges. I came up with $15 billion for HBCUs, historic black universities and colleges, because they don't have the kind of contributors that they have to build these laboratories and the like. Any black student is capable in college of doing any white student can do. They just don't have the money, but now they'll be able to get those jobs in high tech. We're in a situation where the idea that he is claiming to have done something that had the cleanest water, he hadn't done a damn thing.
he said that's what he wanted.
Out of the Paris Peace Accord.
So you
climate
can't
accord.
talk and you
I
can't
immediately
listen?
joined it because if we reach
By the way,
1.5
Flint, Michigan
degrees
came out when
Celsius,
you were vice
The
president.
Paris Peace Accords will fix
the
everything.
essential threat to humanity
The
is
Flint,
climate
Michigan
change,
story
and he
came
didn't
out
do
when
a
you were
damn
vice
thing about
president.
it.
What have
He
you done
wants
for
to
that?
undo all that I've done.
The Paris Accord was going to cost us $1 trillion, and China nothing, and Russia nothing, and India nothing. It was a ripoff
Close
of
your
the
fucking
United
mouth,
States.
Joe.
And I ended it
There you
because
go.
I didn't want to waste that money because they treat us horribly. We were the only ones who was costing us money. Nobody else was paying into it, and it was a disaster. But everything that he said just now, I'll give you an example. I heard him say before insulin. I'm the one that got the insulin down for the seniors. I took care of the seniors. What he's doing is destroying all of our medical programs because the migrants coming in, they want everybody. And look, I have the biggest heart on the stage. I guarantee you that. And I want to take care of people. But we're destroying our country. They're taking over our schools, our hospitals, and they're going to be taking over Social Security. He is destroying Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid.
Here we go.
The
Here
idea
comes a
is
curse
that
word.
we, in fact, we were
If only.
the only ones of consequence who were not members of the Paris Accord. How can we do anything if we're not able? The United States can't get its under control. One of the largest polluters in the world, number one. We're making
Excuse
significant
me?
progress.
Oh,
By
yeah.
2030,
Excuse me?
and a half. We have made.
We're
significant
not
progress.
even
And
fucking
we're continuing to make
close.
progress. We set
Like,
up a climate corps.
not even
where
close.
thousands of young people will learn how to deal with climate, just like the Peace Corps. And we're going to.
like getting your vaccinations before a hurricane so it'll be easier to save you? Is that the kind of green accord that you're looking for there, Biden?
Claims that he has the biggest heart up here, and he's really concerned about pollution and about climate. I've not seen any indication of that. And by the way, with regard to prescription drugs, one company agreed that they would reduce the price to $35, which I was calling for, one voluntarily. I made sure every company in the world, every pharmaceutical company, cannot have to pay.
Thank you.
And by the way,
Thank you. No, by the way.
So
Thank
every
you.
day, millions of Americans struggle just to make ends meet. For many older Americans, Social Security provides a critical lifeline. President Biden, if nothing is done to Social Security, seniors will see their benefits cut in just over 10 years. Will you name tonight one specific step that you're willing to take to keep Social Security solvent?
yes, make the very
Yes,
wealthy
but let's
begin
make
to
sure
pay
that
their
we take
fair
care of the
share.
seniors in
Right
this
now,
country because they're not getting
everybody
enough
making
care
under $170,000
in this country.
pays 6% of their income, of their paycheck, every single time they get a paycheck from the time the first one they get when they're 18 years old. The idea that they're going to, I'm proposing that everybody, the millionaires pay 1%. 1%.
Here we go,
So
millionaires
no one
again.
I would not raise the cost of Social Security for anybody under $400,000. After that, I began to make the wealthy begin to pay their fair share by increasing from 1% beyond to be able to guarantee the program for life.
So you still have 82 seconds left. Are there any other measures that you think that would be able to help keep Social Security solvent, or is that one enough?
Well, no, that one enough will keep it solvent, but the biggest thing I'll do if we defeat this man, because he wants to get rid of Social Security. He thinks there's plenty to cut in Social Security. He's wanting to cut Social Security and Medicare, both times. And and if you look at the program put forward by the House Republican caucus that he supports, is in fact want to cut it as well. The idea that we don't need to protect our seniors is ridiculous. And by the way, the American public has greater health care coverage today than ever before. And on the ACA, as I said, you're in a circumstance where 400,000 people, 40 million people would not have insurance because they have a pre-existing condition. Only thing that allows them to have that insurance is the fact that they, in fact, are part of the ACA. And by the way, the other thing is, we're in a situation where we talk about education for black communities. I've raised the amount of money for Pell Grants, another $8,000. So anybody making under $70,000 a year is going to be able to get $15,000 toward their tuition. He just doesn't know what he's talking about.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump.
So I've dealt with politicians all my life. I've been on this side of the equation for the last 8 years. I've never seen anybody lie like this guy. He lies. I've never seen it. He can look you in the face. About so many other things, too. And we mentioned the laptop. We mentioned Russia, Ukraine. Everything he does is a lie. It's misinformation and disinformation.
Using their own words against
Doesn't feel good, does it?
It's a total lie on the military. It's a disgrace. But Social Security, he's destroying it. because millions of people are pouring into our country, and they're putting them onto Social Security, they're putting them onto Medicare, Medicaid, they're putting them in our hospitals, they're taking the place
can't
of
just
our
shake your head to
citizens.
that, man.
What they're doing
Like,
to the
if you're
VA,
doing
to our
that-
veterans is unbelievable. Our veterans are living in the street, and these people are living in luxury hotels. He doesn't know what he's doing, and it's really coming back. I've never seen such anger in our country before.
President Biden?
The idea that veterans are not being taken care of, I told you before. And by the way, when I said suckers and losers, he acknowledged after that he fired that general. That general got fired because he's the one that acknowledged that that's what he said. He was the one standing with Trump when he said it, number one. Number two, the idea that we're going to be in a situation where all these millions and millions, the way he talks about it, illegal aliens are coming into the country.
By the way,
and
Obama
taking
fired
away
that
our
general
jobs.
that talked
There's a
shit
reason
to
why we
the
have
reporter
fastest
from the
growing
Rolling
economy in
Stones
the
too.
world.
So,
The reason why we have the most
and then the
successful
Rolling
economy in the
Stones
world.
reporter
We're doing better
somehow
than any
crashed
other
his car
nation in the
going
world.
200
And by
miles
the
per
way,
hour
those
and
15
died of that
Nobel
fire
laureats he
car
talked about being
Whoopsies.
those 15 Nobel
Lest we
laureates,
forget.
economists, they all said that if Trump is reelected, we're likely to have a recession, and inflation is going to increasingly go up. And by the way, worst president in history, 159 presidential scholars voted him the worst president in the history of the
Well,
United States.
presidential scholars are
President Biden,
morons
thank you so much. Let's turn to the
because
cost of child care.
all of the worst presidents are the
all
ones
my
they put at the
friends
top
said
of the
that I'm
list.
so much hotter than you, and all my friends think that I'm
But
way
the average
cuter
cost
too.
of child care in this country has risen to more than $11,000 a year per child. For many families, the cost of child care for 2 children is more than their rent. In your second term, what would you do to make child care more affordable?
Just to go back, the general got fired because he was no good. And if he said that, that's why he made it up. But we have 19 people that said I didn't say it, and they're very highly respected, much more so than him. The other thing is, he doesn't fire people. He never fired people. I've never seen him fire anybody. I did fire a lot. I fired Comey because he was no good. I fired a lot of the top people at the FBI, drained the swamp. They were no good. Not easy to fire people. You pay a price for it.
Callbacks,
But they were
it's
no good. I
important.
inherited these people. I didn't put him there. I didn't put Comey there. He was no good. I fired him. This guy hasn't fired anybody. He never fires. He should have fired every military man that was involved with that the Afghanistan horror show, the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. He didn't fire. Did you fire anybody? Did you fire anybody that's on the border that's allowed us to have the worst border in the history of the world? Did anybody get fired for allowing 18 million people, many from prisons, many from mental institutions? Did you fire anybody that allowed our country to be destroyed? Joe, our country is being destroyed as you and I sit up here and waste a lot of time on this debate. This shouldn't be a debate. He's the worst president. He just said about me because I said it. But look, he's the worst president in the history of our country. He's destroyed our country. Now all of a sudden he's trying to get a little tough on the border. He came out with a nothing deal, and it reduced it a little bit, like this much. It's insignificant. He wants open borders. He wants our country to either be destroyed or he wants to pick up those people as voters. And I don't think we just can't let it happen. If he wins this election, our country doesn't have a chance, not even a chance, of coming out of this rut. We probably won't have a country left anymore. That's how bad it is. He is the worst in history by far.
I forgot what the question
Thank you, President
was.
Trump. President Biden?
We are the most admired
I thought
country
it was
in the
about
world.
child care,
We're the
but at this
United
point, I have no
States of America.
fucking idea what
There's
we're
nothing
even
beyond our
debating.
capacity. We have the finest military in the history
Who's
of the world.
prettier than the others,
The
is
finest
what I
in the
know.
history of the world.
That's all I've
no
got.
one thinks we're weak. No one wants
He
to
said
screw
there's
around with
nothing
us. Nobody.
beyond our
Number one.
capacity.
Number two, the idea that we're talking about worst presidents. I wasn't joking. Look it up. Go online.
Okay, cool, awesome. Can we move on? Can we be
159,
adults in this room, or are we
exact
both just
number.
going to be fucking?
Presidential historians. They've had meetings.
God
and they
damn,
voted
guys.
Who's the worst president in American history?
Good
One
job.
From best to worst.
Good job.
They
You got
said he was the
historians
worst
to
in
agree with you.
all
Good.
of American history. That's a fact.
Doesn't mean a
That's not-
fucking
that's
thing
not
to
conjecture. You can
inflation
argue
or
they're
anything
wrong, but
that's
what
going
they voted.
on
The
in
idea
this
that
fucking
he is
country.
knowing-
Or
doing
that
anything to
we're
deal
on the
with
verge of World War
child
III.
care.
Nothing.
He did
Nothing
very-
to
for
do with
virtually
any of
nothing
that.
with child care.
Good.
We
Thank
should
you, guys.
significantly increase the child care tax credit. We should significantly increase the
Yeah, we
availability
should. We should.
of
We should. We
women
should.
and
How are you
men
going to do it?
Or single parents to be able to
Any
go back
ideas?
to work, and we should encourage businesses to have.
Thank you, President
child care
Biden.
facilities.
Thank you.
President Trump, the question was about what would you do to make child care more affordable,
Okay.
if you want to take your minute.
Just so you understand, we have polling, we have other things that they rate him the worst because what he's done is so bad.
Answer
And
the
they
question,
rate me,
Trump.
I'll show you. I will show you. And they rate me one of the best, okay? And if I'm given another 4 years, I will be the best. I think I'll be the best. Nobody's ever created an economy like us. Nobody ever cut taxes like us. He's the only one I know. He wants to raise your taxes by 4 times. He wants to raise everybody's taxes by 4 times. He wants the Trump tax cuts to expire. So everybody, including the two of you, are going to pay 4 to 5 times. Nobody ever heard of this before. All
Two
my
of them
life,
are
I
having
grow up
kids
and I
or
see
past the age,
politicians
dog.
talking about cutting taxes. When we cut taxes, as I said, we did more business. Apple and all these companies, they were bringing
right, we have reached,
money back into our country.
Terminal
The worst
bullshit
president
in this
history by
debate.
far, and everybody knows it.
President Biden?
Look, the fact of the matter is that he's dead wrong about he's
Being
increased
the worst president
tariff.
because
He's
I've got
increased- he will
27
increase the,
historians
taxes
that
on
just
the
do
tax.
archaeological
I said
digs,
I
but
made
they think that
taxes
he's
on
terrible
less
too.
than
Like,
$400,000. I didn't. But this tariff is 10% tariffs. Everything coming into the country, you know what the economists say?
Guys,
That's gonna
guys,
cost the average
the
American
question was about
$2,000
lowering child care
because
costs.
they're gonna have to pay the difference
Child care.
in food and all the things.
I like to text on my fucking
True.
cellular
He's in a
unit. I
situation where
send
he
oopsie
talks
daisies
about
and
how
poop
he has
emojis. It's
not
fun.
raised- he's somehow helped the middle class. Middle class have been devastated by you. Now you want a
By
new
him?
tax cut of $5
Or
trillion
by
over the
everybody
next 10
for the
years,
last 30
which is
years.
going to fundamentally bankrupt the country. You had the largest
Fundamental,
deficit in
we're
America's American
$34
history.
trillion
Number
in
one.
debt,
Number
Joe.
two, you have not. In
How
fact,
much
And you
more
want to send more of
bankrupt do
it
we
to
need to
other
get?
countries. You want to send more of it to other
progress
countries.
with China. We are the lowest trade deficit with China since 2010.
Thank you,
We're at the
President Biden.
highest. You lost
Thank you,
Why is
President
that?
Biden.
Why is that?
Trade
Let's
deficits
discuss an
don't matter.
epidemic
I'm in
impacting
100%
millions of
trade
Americans
deficit
that
with
both of you
Walmart.
have made a
I
top
still
priority in
benefit
your
from
first
shopping
term,
there.
The opioid crisis. And for both of you, the number of overdose deaths in this country has gone up. Under your term, it went up. Under your term, it has gone up. Former President Trump, despite the efforts that both of you have made, more than 100,000 Americans are dying from overdoses every year, primarily from fentanyl and other opioids. What will you do to help Americans right now in the throes of addiction who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
To finish up, we now have
He's
the
a
largest
terrible
deficit
president.
in the history of our country under this guy. We have the largest deficit with China. He gets paid by China. He's a Manchurian candidate.
There
he
we
gets
go.
money from China.
We were waiting on
I
it.
think he's afraid to
We
do
were
it
waiting on it.
himself.
There, it only
But
took
you notice
8
he
minutes
never
left.
took
He
out
got it
any
in there.
tariffs
Somehow he
because
got it
made
in
so
under the
much
wire.
money with the tariffs that I imposed on China. He never took them away. He can't because it's too much money. It's tremendous. And we saved our steel industries, and there was more to come, but he hasn't done that. But he hasn't cut the tariffs because he can't, because it's too much money. But he's got the largest deficit in the history of our country, and he's got the worst situation with China. China's going to own us if you keep allowing them to do what they're doing to us as a country. They are killing us as a country, Joe, and you can't let that happen. You're destroying our country.
So, President Trump, you have 67 seconds left. The question was, what are you going to do to help Americans in the throes of addiction right now who are struggling to get the treatment they need?
Jake, we were doing very well at addiction until the COVID came along. We had the 2.5, almost 3 years of like nobody's ever had before, any country, in every way. And then we had to get tough. And it was the drugs pouring across the border it started to increase. We got great equipment. We bought the certain dog that's the most incredible thing that you've ever seen, the way they can spot it. We did a lot.
certain
And
dog?
we were getting
God damn it,
very low
Trump.
numbers, very, very low numbers. Then he came along.
You can
The
never
numbers-
accuse the
have you
man of
seen
being on
numbers now?
script.
It's not only the 18 million people. That
He's
I
just
believe
out
is
there
even low
fucking
because
giving her-
the gotaways,
giving her
they don't even talk about
tits.
gotaways. But the numbers of the amount of drugs and human trafficking in women coming across our border, the worst thing I've ever seen, at numbers that nobody's ever seen under him because the border's so bad. But the number of drugs coming across our border now is the largest we've ever had by far.
President Trump, thank you. President Biden?
Fentanyl and the byproducts of fentanyl went down for a while. And I wanted to make sure we use the machinery that can detect fentanyl, these big machines that roll over everything that comes across the border. And it costs a lot of money.
Were we
That
just
was
making
part of
fun
this
of
deal we
Trump
put together.
for
This
doing that?
bipartisan deal. More fentanyl
These machines that they're
more
great.
people
They
to
roll
detect
across the
drugs, more
fucking
numbers
border.
of agents, more numbers of all the people at the border. And when we had that deal done, he called his Republican colleagues and said, don't do it. It's going to hurt me politically. No, he never argued it's not a good bill. It's a really good bill. We need those machines. We need those machines. And we're coming down very hard in every country in Asia in terms of precursors for fentanyl. And Mexico is working with us to make sure they don't have the technology to be able to put it together. That's what we have to do. We need those machines.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, and again, the question is about Americans in the throes of addiction right now, struggling to get the treatment they need.
Well, this does pertain to it. He ended Remain in Mexico. He ended catch and release. I made it catch and release in Mexico, not catch and release here. We had so many things that we had done, hard negotiations with Mexico, and I got it all for nothing. It's just like when you have a hostage. We always pay $6 billion for a hostage. Every time we say it's a hostage. Now we have a hostage, a Wall Street Journal reporter. I think a good guy. And he's over there because Putin is laughing at this guy, probably asking for billions of dollars for the reporter. I will have him out very quickly as soon as I take office. Before I take office,
The question was
I said,
about addiction,
literally,
guys.
as soon
We're
as I
10
win the
minutes into
election,
this damn
I will
thing,
have
and
that
nobody's.
reporter out. He should have had him out a long time ago. But Putin's probably asking
Not that
for
I care
billions
what
and
the
billions of
answer is,
dollars
but
because this guy
There
pays
is
it
no
every time.
answer.
We had two
How are you gonna
cases. We
fucking?
paid $6
Are you
billion
gonna hold the
for
people
five
that
people.
pay for you to be
I
in
got
that seat
58
accountable?
people out,
I'm
and I
sorry.
paid essentially nothing.
Hey Dane, can
Thank
you
you,
answer me a
President
quick
Trump.
question?
Let's turn to
Are
concerns
corporations
that
still
voters
people?
have about each of you.
Okay, so then we're still
President
gonna have the
Biden,
drug
you
problem
would
that we
be
have in this country.
86
So
at the end of your second term. How do you address concerns about your capability to handle the toughest job in the world well into your 80s?
Well, first of all, I spent half my career being criticized being the youngest person in politics. I was the
you don't have to worry about that
second
anymore.
Is that how
Here's the
life
fucking
works?
question.
You're the youngest for
And I'm
half, and then
oldest.
you're the oldest for
This guy's
half?
3 years younger and a lot less competent. I think that just look at the record. Look at what I've done. Look how I've turned around the horrible situation he left me.
Yeah.
As I said,
Let's look at
1,500
what you've
jobs,
done.
800,000
Jobs are down,
manufacturing
the
jobs.
economy's down,
More investment
interest
in
rates are
America.
up,
94
and
crime bill.
inflation is up, 94 crime bill.
Plagiar-
You were a joke as a vice
lying.
president. You were more
We brought off a
effective
lot
as a
of people.
meme generator than an
And the
actual
whole idea
vice
of
president.
Computer
Like,
chips, we used to have 40% of the market. We invented those chips, and we lost it. because
Obama
he was
fucking
sending
made
people
fun of you
to
during his
to
White
find
House
the
press
cheapest jobs
secretary
overseas
correspondence
and to bring
meeting.
home a
It's
product.
crazy.
So I went to South Korea. I convinced Samsung to invest billions of dollars here
Oh, you
in the United
convinced them?
States. And they're, guess what? Those fabs they call that to build these chips, those fabs pay over $100,000. You don't need a college degree for them. And there's billions, about $40 billion already being invested and being built right now in the United States, creating significant jobs for Americans from all over the world.
President Biden, you have 40 seconds left. Would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. The idea that somehow we are this failing country. I never heard a president talk like this before. We're the envy of the world. Name me a single major country president who wouldn't trade places with the United States of America for all our problems and all our opportunities. We're the most progressive country in the world in getting things done. We're the strongest country in the world. We're a country in the world who keeps our word, and everybody trusts us.
And the price of that
all
is
our
constant
allies,
vigilance.
And our those who he coddles up to, from Kim Jong Un, he sends love letters to, and Putin, etc.
Love
They
letters.
don't want to screw around with us.
Thank you. Former President Trump, to follow up, you would be 82 at the end of your second term. What do you say to voters who have concerns about your capabilities to serve?
Well, I took 2 tests, cognitive tests. I aced them, both of them, as you know. I made
here
it
we go.
public. He took none. I'd like to see him take one, just one, a real easy one. Like go through the first 5 questions. He couldn't do it. But I took 2 cognitive tests. I took physical exams every year. And, you know, we knock on wood wherever we may have wood, that I'm in very good health. I just won 2 club championships, not even senior, 2 regular club championships. To do that, you have to be quite smart, and you have to be able to hit the ball a long way. And I do it. He doesn't do it. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. He challenged me to a golf match. He can't hit a ball 50 yards. I think I'm in very good shape. I feel that I'm as in good a shape as I
Joe.
was 25,
what are you
30
doing,
years ago.
Bubba?
Actually, I'm probably a little
You
bit
can't
lighter.
even smile on half your
But
face,
I'm in
bro.
as good a shape as I was years ago. I feel very good. I feel the same. But I was willing to take a cognitive test. And you know what? If I didn't do well, I aced them. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who's a great guy when he was White House doctor. And then I took another one, a similar one.
Explaining too much.
And one of them said they've never seen anybody ace him.
Oh,
Thank
there
you.
it is.
President Biden?
You can see he is 6'5" and only 223 pounds, or 35 pounds.
He's not
Well, you
six
said
foot
6'4",
five.
200. Well, anyway, that's what you're. Anyway, just take a look at what he says he is, and take a look at what he is. Look, I'd be happy to have a driving contest with him. The reason I got my handicap, which when I was vice president,
Dane?
down to a 6.
Are we
We are in a
seriously arguing
presidential
about
election.
Oh, by the way,
golf
Comparing
skills?
handicaps.
Play golf if you carry your own
We've
bag.
officially fucking lost.
You can do it.
That's the biggest lie that he's a 6 handicap of all.
But I have, you know how many?
I've seen this.
Oh,
way, I know you're
shit.
Okay, let's
not
not
act
act
like
like
children.
We're
President
doomed.
Trump, we're going to
We're
move
doomed.
Like children.
You
to
are
a
a child.
specific
You are
concern
a
that
child.
voters have about you.
Comparatively,
tonight
apparently.
that once all legal challenges have been exhausted, that you will accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins, and you will say right now that political violence in any form is unacceptable.
Well, I shouldn't have to say that, but of course I believe that. It's totally unacceptable. And if you would see my statements that I made on Twitter at the time, and also my statement that I made in the Rose Garden, you would say it's one of the strongest statements you've ever seen. In addition to the speech I made in front of, I believe, the largest crowd I've ever spoken to, and I will tell you, nobody ever talks about that. They talk about a relatively small number of people that went to the Capitol, and in many cases were ushered in by the police. And as Nancy Pelosi said, it was her responsibility, not mine. She said that loud and clear. But the answer is, if the election is fair, free, and I want that more than anybody. And I'll tell you something. I wish he was a great president, because I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be at one of my many places enjoying
Don't say I'm running
myself.
for
I wouldn't be
president
under
because I need to
indictment
serve
because
my
I wouldn't have
country.
been his political
Shut the
appointment,
fuck up.
opponent, because he indicted me because I was his opponent. I wish he was a great president. I would rather have that. I wouldn't be here. I don't mind being here. But the only reason I'm here is he's so bad as a president that I'm going to make America great again. We're going to make America great again. We're a failing nation right now. We're a seriously failing nation. And we're a failing nation because of him. His policies are so bad. His military policies are insane. They're insane. These are wars that will never end with him. He will drive us into World War III, and we're closer to World War III than anybody can imagine. We are very, very close to World War III, and he's driving us there. And Kim Jong-un and President Xi of China, Kim Jong-un of North Korea, all of these, Putin, they don't respect him. They don't fear him. They have nothing going with this gentleman, and he's going to drive us into World War III.
You want a World War III, let him follow and win, and let Putin say, do what you want, NATO. Just do what you want. There's a thing called Article 5. An attack on one is attack on all, and required response. The idea, I can't think of a single major leader in the world who wouldn't trade places with the job I've done and what they've done. Because we are a powerful nation. We have wonderful people. It's because of the people, not me. It's because of the American people. They're capable of anything, and they step up when they're needed. And right now, we're needed. We're needed to protect the world because of our
What
own
the
safety
fuck
is at
have you been
stake.
doing for the
And
people?
again, you want to have a war, just let Putin go ahead and take Kyiv, make sure they move on, see what happens in Poland, Hungary, and other places along that
Or
border.
maybe you should just start
Then you
firing
have a
American
war.
weapons in their
President
Providence. That'll
Trump, as
probably
I come
spark
back
it
to you
off, huh?
for a follow-up, the question was, will you accept the results of this election, regardless of who wins?
Just to finish what
It's a
I said,
loaded
if I
question.
might,
If
Russia.
the election's rigged and
They took a lot
stolen,
of
then
land from
no.
Bush. They took a lot of land from Obama and Biden. They took no land, nothing from Trump, nothing. He knew not to do it. He's not going to play games with me. He knew that. I got along with him very well, but he knew not to play games. He took nothing from me. But now he's going to take the whole thing from this man right here. That's a war that should have never started. It would have never started ever with me. And he's going to take Ukraine. And, you know, you asked me a question before, would you do this? He's got us in such a bad position right now with Ukraine and Russia because Ukraine's not winning that war. He said, I will never settle until such time. They're running out of people. They're running out of soldiers. They've lost so many people. It's so sad. They've lost so many people, and they've lost those gorgeous cities with the golden domes that are 1,000 years old, all because of him and stupid decisions. Russia would have never attacked if I were
President Trump,
president.
the question was, will you accept the results of the election, regardless of who wins? Yes or no, please.
If it's a fair and legal and good election, absolutely. I would have much rather accepted these, but the fraud and everything else was ridiculous. And if you want, we'll have a news conference on it in a week, or we'll have another one of these in a week. But I will absolutely, there's nothing I'd rather do. It would be much easier for me to do that than I'm running again. I wasn't really going to run until I saw the horrible job he did. He's destroying our country. I would be very happy to be someplace else, in a nice location someplace. And again, no indictments, no political opponent stuff, because it's the only way he thinks he can win. But unfortunately, it's driven up my numbers and driven them up to a very high level because the people understand it.
Well, let's see what your numbers are when this election is over. Let's see. You're a whiner. When you lost the first time, you continued, you appealed and appealed the courts all across the country. Not one single court in America
You guys
said
he was a
had any
Russian
merit,
spy,
state or local.
Manchurian
None.
candidate for
But you
4
continue to
fucking
provoke
years.
this
And you're
lie
acting like
about
he's
somehow
the
there was all
crybaby.
this misrepresentation,
With your
all
pussy
this
hats
stealing.
on.
There is no evidence of that at all. And I tell you what, I doubt whether you'll accept it because you're such a whiner. The idea, if you lose again, you accepting anything, you can't stand the loss. Something snapped in you when you lost the last time.
We'll be right back with more from the CNN presidential debate.
We're going to get to some of the points when it's all over, when the other talking heads are talking because they have nothing to say. But I neglected during the last segment to address some of the comments that we've had coming in from Chris. And this is going all the way back to like 9 p.m. Chris says, never have I seen 2 more decrepit-looking geezers take the presidential debate stage. Biden sounds so bad, too. Oof. RFK Jr. sounds better than Biden. That's actually saying something, and RFK at least has it as an excuse. He said even Trump sounds tired, and that's and sad too. Maybe they made Trump take a tranquilizer to even the odds a bit. Trump has seemed a little bit non-Trumpy.
Yeah.
Yeah, doesn't
He
he
must
seem
be
like
tired
he's been...
from all those campaigns and all. Didn't he give a speech before he went to this thing too?
Yeah,
I thought he was on location before he actually went to the debate.
He may have been, but yeah, I mean, between juggling campaigning and being in courtrooms for the last few months and all that, and I mean, listen, he's no spring chicken, so would not doubt it at all. Chris also says, that's right, Trump nailed Mr. 94 crime bill to the wall. Good work. Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't brought that up yet.
I wish he would have dug into it even a little bit more. Trump kind of like hinted around the edges at it, but didn't really, drive the point home. But, would have been
It just
nice.
seems like, again, it's devolved into that what we hoped that it wouldn't. It's just like 2 old men arguing on a golf course. Like, no, you're a stupid person. No, you're the dumb one. I hit the ball further than you. I should play through. No, no, all my friends think that you're ugly and that I'm hot. Well, no, all my friends think that I'm ugly. Or I'm hot and you're ugly. Like, we asked you about childcare. Yeah, but this guy, he doesn't even he
can't hit a ball
doesn't think-
50 yards.
Right? It's like, what's your handicap? Oh, my handicap is way lower than yours. Well, what is it? I'm not going to tell you. You tell me yours first. No, I'm not going to tell you until you tell me yours first.
Whatever his is, mine's about 5 yards further.
And he's like, oh my God, he's a 12 handicap. That's bullshit. I saw him. He moves the golf. I saw him on the golf course. Excuse me. Let me put the Trump voice on. I saw him on the golf course earlier. He kicked the ball. I didn't say anything, but I saw him kick the ball and it went into the hole. No big deal. I hit the ball. I hit the ball straight. I hit it far and I hit it straight. I don't even know if... Have you ever seen the ball, Mr. Biden? I don't know.
Yeah, and Chris's last point, which was a good one in terms of very good point in terms of the debate about, well, who's the biggest polluter, and Biden had that bullshit comment about the U.S. being number one, which is like not even close. But as Chris astutely pointed out, it's the U.S. military that is one of the biggest polluters on Earth. The regular population, the American people, not so much. When you disaggregate all of the, $800 billion to $1 trillion a year of, flying planes and driving tanks that get a half a mile to the gallon and everything else like that, the United States military is much, much heavily weighted in favor of the pollution produced by the U.S.
Jesus. They're still going. Huh?
By a coin toss, we're going to begin with you, President Biden. You have 2 minutes.
We've made significant progress from the debacle that was left by President Trump in his last term. We find ourselves in a situation where, number one, we have to make sure that we have a fair tax system. I ask anyone out there in the audience, or anyone out watching this debate, do you think the tax system is fair? The fact is that I said
no. It should all be abolished.
And how long have you been in Washington?
Taxes and will not.
How many years, Biden?
That will be the case again. But this guy has increased your taxes because of the deficit. Number one, he's increased inflation.
You all
because
have.
of the debacle he left after the way he handled the pandemic. And he finds himself in a position where he now wants to tax you more by putting a 10% tariff on everything that comes into the United States of America.
That part's true.
When, for example, he wants to get rid of the ability of Medicare for the ability for us to be able to negotiate drug prices with the big pharma companies. Well, guess what? We got it down to $35 for insulin instead of $400. No more than $2,000 for every senior, no matter how much prescription they need.
What's the average cost for a 30-year-old?
That reduced the federal debt by $160 billion over 10 years because the government doesn't have to pay the exorbitant prices.
Ooh, it reduces the government debt by $160 billion when we're $34 trillion in debt.
It's happening now, and everybody in America. He wants to get rid of
These
that.
morons really will break your leg, hand you a crutch, and say, see, without me, you wouldn't be able to walk.
People have for child care. I'm going to make sure we do something about
Unbelievable.
what we're doing on lead pipes and all the things that are causing health problems for people across the country.
All the things that are causing
We're going
health
to continue to fight to bring down inflation and give people a break.
Thank you, President Biden. President Trump, you now have 2 minutes for your closing statement.
Platitudes and soft promises.
Like so many politicians, this man is just a complainer. He said, we want to do this, we want to do that, we want to get rid of this tax, that tax. But he doesn't do anything. All he does is make our country unsafe by allowing millions and millions of people to pour in. Our military doesn't respect him. We look like fools in Afghanistan. We didn't stop Israel. It was such a horrible thing that would have never happened. It should have never happened. Iran was broke. Anybody that did business with Iran, including China, they couldn't do business with the United States. They all passed. Iran was broke. They had no money for Hamas or Hezbollah, for terror, no money whatsoever. Again, Ukraine should have never happened. He talks about all this stuff, but he didn't do it. For 3.5 years, we're living in hell. We have the Palestinians and we have everybody else rioting all over the place. You talk about Charlottesville. This is 100 times Charlottesville, 1,000 times. The whole country is exploding because of you, because they don't respect you, and they have to respect their president, and they don't respect you throughout the world. What we did was incredible. We rebuilt the military. We got the largest tax cut in history, the largest regulation cut in history. The reason he's got jobs is because I cut the regulations that gave jobs, but he's putting a lot of those regulations back on. All of the things that we've done, nobody's never seen anything like. Even from a medical standpoint, right to try, where we can try space-age materials instead of going to Asia or going to Europe and trying to get when you're terminally ill. Now you can go and you can get something. You sign a document. They've been trying to get it for 42 years. But you know what we did for the military was incredible choice for our soldiers, where our soldiers, instead of waiting for 3 months to see a doctor, can go out and get themselves fixed up and readied up and take care of themselves, and they're living. And that's why I had the highest approval rating in the history of the VA. So all of these things, we're in a failing nation, but it's not going to be failing anymore. We're going to make it great again.
Thank you, former President Trump, President Biden. Stay with us because we have full analysis of this debate. Anderson Cooper and Aaron Burnett starts now on CNN.
So, David, I reiterate this banner here. We're in deep shit, aren't we? Couple more comments. Chris says David is spot on about these two old geriatrics arguing. It's pretty sad that these are the two main candidates, but Trump does seem about 15 to 20 years younger than Biden.
And with a lower handicap, don't forget that.
That is absolutely absolutely right. Soto says, honestly, I feel bad for Joe, crying emoji. Yeah, it's and which Chris replies to, which I agree with 100%. It would be a lot easier to feel bad for him if he wasn't such an evil bastard. But
and
yeah,
again,
rough.
He just acts like it was his first term and that he's doing all these things. Like the whole platform that he ran on in the first place was that he had been in Washington forever and he knew the strings to pull. But he keeps acting like all these things are new and subtle and nuanced. We want to get we're gonna make everything better now. Like, how are you gonna do it? We're gonna make it better. Like how? We're gonna lower child care for black people. Cool. Does that mean you're gonna raise child care for everybody else? Like, it's just I mean, that's the problem I have with all these decorum bullshits, is that it's all platitudes. There's no lay out your plan. Give them, fuck it. Instead of having a debate, have like a PowerPoint. Like each president gets a 1-hour PowerPoint presentation about how he's going to make the country better again. And here's his strategy. Not, I've got a better golf swing than you. Or, you're a bad president. No, you're a bad president. No, you're a bad president. No, you're a bad president. Like, there was nothing accomplished. And again, like we said before we went online, or on stream, this was the first debate, and I, you know, if you want to call it that's what we'll call it. But this is the first debate that I don't think any voters changed at all. Like, everybody was just showing up to see what this monstrosity looked like. It's not even a debate. I mean, I'll kick it back over to you. If you saw something that I didn't, let me know.
No, yeah, I mean, I don't. I mean, I think it's also a function of how divided our society is, that I don't necessarily think that there was that many minds changed in debates of elections gone by in years past, but especially not now in light of the division where both sides are living in an existential crisis of their own making, where they see the other guy as, quote unquote, literally Hitler is going to put us on trains. Now, when you look at Biden's regime that's colluding with private industry to censor and jail people that they see as their political opponents, I'd say of the two of them, if we're talking about literally Hitler, Biden definitely fits, more of his diagram overlaps with literally Hitler than Trump's. But
I'd argue that he supports them more, seeing as we've sent billions of dollars to actual Nazis. But, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but, you know, that's neither here nor there. But yes, no, I agree in general with the statement that, yeah, not many minds are going to be changed. We're all just kind of tuning into the train wreck because we can't really look away. A few points that I wrote down, you know, we at the halftime intermission break, we kind of talked about some of their bigger bullshit statements and shed some more light on those during the first half. And so here's the bigger ones that I wrote down from the second half. This whole concept that Joe keeps hitting and the political left always hits about the wealthy paying their fair share. Well, just a couple statistics on that. So the top 1% of income earners pay 42.3% of all federal income taxes. And that combined amount is actually more than the bottom 90% of income earners combined. So let me just make that a little bit more simple. 42%, a little under half, we'll round up to half. If you have 10 people out to dinner and one person pays for half of the bill, which is Well, 51% if it's more than the other 90% combined. If that one person pays for more of the bill than the other 9 people in the group, would you say that one person's not paying his fair share? So, again, we are weapons of meme destruction. We're here to destroy bullshit myths, and this is one that's trotted out all the time. It's one of those platitudes that have no substance to it at all. If you like scratch that's a 5-second Google search. The top 1% of earners pay 42.3% of all federal income taxes. And when you take that down to the top 3% or the top 5% of all income earners, now we're talking that are paid upwards of 80 or 90% of all federal income taxes. So to single out that group and say that they're not paying their fair share is just completely flies in the face of the facts of the matter. And as we kind of said during the middle break, and then, let David jump in on it, is if you are focused in this sort of Damocles sort of $34 trillion that's hanging over all of our collective heads, the mortgaged futures of us already living today, millennials and younger, are never going to see Social Security. It's not going to happen. But our kids, our grandkids, our great-grandkids, their mortgage or their futures have been mortgaged 10x already, and they're not even breathing yet. And if we're concerned about that whole situation, and you're only looking at the side of the ledger of taxation, which is the income side of it, and you're not looking at the other side, which is spending, which, as we said, revenues have increased on the federal level every year since 2009, even during Trump's tax cut years. So it's clearly not a revenue problem. It's clearly a spending problem. And you can take in as much as you want. But if you're just going to turn on the printing press at the drop of a hat and print another $4 or $5 trillion and add it onto the tab, you're not going anywhere good as a society, fiscally, monetarily, and everything down the line. So, to focus on the people not paying their fair share is completely missing the forest for the trees. When it doesn't matter how much they bring in, they will always outspend it. And that's because they pay no consequences for spending it, and it's not their money. If anything, they're getting rich doing it and staying in power because you keep buying their bullshit political promises. Not you, not the sane space, the people that, follow WMD podcast, but the general voting public. So,
Well, I think first of all, I'm going to exonerate the moderators because their questions were very to the point, and I'm clearly speaking.
Honestly,
in
not a
jest
bad
right
job.
now. I was speaking in jest because they didn't do a good job. They didn't keep them on target, and it just seemed like they just created, and they didn't hold anybody accountable. Kind of like when the main takeaway for me was Biden literally said the quiet part out loud during the debate, which was always the worry, I'm assuming from that side, that basically he said, we're not even really paying Ukraine. We're selling them bombs, so it's coming right back to us. I'm sorry, us? America or Lockheed Martin and Boeing?
Right.
Which one? So you just admitted to laundering money through this fucking proxy war that you're committing that's got us on the verge. Nobody brought up World War III except for Trump. Nobody brought it up. Not one. It's kind of a fucking problem. They just reinstated conscription and mandated it. I don't know why they did that. They didn't bring up the fact that Biden just allowed for, speaking of, heightening tensions, you just said that you just gave the green light to do the thing that you guaranteed that you wouldn't, i.e. American weapons on Russian soil. Any questions, any comments? No, nothing? Okay, cool. So, again, this wasn't a debate. This wasn't real. This was just trotting people out so that we can say we had a debate, and it's still, like I said, I didn't expect anything out of this, and it turned out to be a whole lot of much ado about nothing. Because there wasn't anything accomplished here. No one really gained anything, but now we can say that we had an official debate, even though there were a lot, like a rules list longer than your freaking grocery list for a month. So,
yeah,
that's my 2 takeaways.
This might have gone as sort of, unless you were a dutiful a WMD podcast listener or viewer and are completely up to date and watched last week's episode 199, this probably did not slip by you. But if you didn't, this line may have been so innocuous and so sort of just kind of a throwaway platitude that it may not have even caught your ear. But if you're paying attention, this line really gives away the whole game for why Biden and anybody who thinks like him is never fit to be president. He said, quote, "There is nothing beyond our capacity." Now, on episode 199, we talked extensively about the two mindsets about the constrained versus the unconstrained vision of humanity, and that the unconstrained vision, which is what Biden is espousing there, is saying that there is nothing, there is no master plan that we can't come up with. There's an infinite amount of resources that we could apply to any problem in the world because we're the United States. We can be the police. We can be everywhere at all times. We will never give up our values of freedom and truth and justice in order to do that, even if it takes, bombing wedding parties and brown kids halfway around the world. We can accomplish all of those things because we are the United States of America. That view is inherently totalitarian, and it is not only to the world, but also to the American people themselves. Because what he's saying when he says there is nothing beyond our capacity, what he's saying is there is no amount of pain we will inflict upon you. There is no amount of extraction of resources that we will not take from you, the American people, in order to do whatever our policy preference is in country A, B, or C. He is telling you that despite a country that's $34 trillion in debt and multiple generations down the line already picking up that tab, that he is willing to spend every dime and fire up every printing press he needs to do to be able to do the next war, to drop the next round of bombs, to pay his military industrial complex cronies that are all throughout his regime and the DC foreign policy consensus that dominates the uniparty in DC. He's saying that he will spare no expense despite having nothing left to spend as a country. Again, $34 trillion in debt. Resources are not infinite. If you are saying that there is nothing that you can't do, you have this warped view of the perfectibility of man. You think you can just walk into any country. This was the impetus behind Iraq Wars 1, 2, and 3. We can just go into a country and completely dominate a culture that we haven't spent 5 seconds trying to understand, and we can instill Western values in them. And the very next day, they're going to be voting between George H.W. Bush and Hillary Clinton.
By the way,
that's not how this works. That's not how any of this works. And if your president, if your commander-in-chief has this view that there's nothing beyond his capacity, that's a very dangerous thought to have. And that is very Hitlerian, Stalin-esque, Maoist in tone.
Just to parlay this onto that, Dane, how do you think the people in Hawaii, how do you think the people in Flint, Michigan, how do you think the people in East Palestine, how do you think they felt about that when they said there's no amount of things that we can't accomplish all at the same time?
Yeah, exactly.
Have they been helped out yet?
Yeah.
Have they rebuilt Hawaii yet? Have those people been put into their houses again, or were their places sold off? Or are we still dealing with fallout from the train wreck? Are we still dealing with water that we talked about, fresh water in Flint, Michigan, which was a problem back during, like we said, Joe Biden's candidacy? How do you think they felt, Dane, with all that we can do anything we want kind of thing? Do you think they felt a little left out?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, they're
That's
thinking, where's our infinite help?
Of course, then again, seeing how much the Biden campaign has helped out the black people, seeing as they keep talking about them, maybe you don't want the Biden campaign's help or the government's help at all.
Yeah. Yeah, everything they do just keeps getting worse. War on poverty grows up. War on drugs wins. War on terror, more terror anywhere else.
Homelessness goes up. And then all of a sudden on the war, we lose track of funds. We just lost $26 billion. Whoops. Oh, well.
Yeah.
But don't be $5 short on your taxes this year because we'll come for you.
Exactly. The next one, so this is one that neither one of them really answered despite repeated attempts. And, like I said, I actually thought you were being serious about the CNN moderators. Now, I understand they weren't able to control them very well, but, they are not even
They
hardly
repeated
able
the
to
question
control
a couple
themselves.
times. You will say.
I will also say I have a very, very low bar for CNN, so it's not hard for them to meet it. How are you going to decrease childcare costs? Well, neither one of them could answer the question because the question was loaded in the sense that how are you going to approach this problem from a government perspective? And the reason why that's loaded is because there is no answer to that. The government cannot reduce childcare costs. It is a simple matter of a service provided and what is the charge for it. So whether you're going to have somebody come to your house and take care of your child as like a nanny caretaker, one-on-one type thing, or whether you're sending them to a daycare or whatever your child care arrangement is, it is a service that those people have to set their price based on they have bills to pay, they have families to feed, they need to earn a living as well, and you can either pay for it or you can't. So the fact that childcare is so expensive is a function of several things. That are the fault of government in terms of making it worse, but kind of counterintuitively, you would think, well, if the government made it worse, then of course they can make it better. They can't, not in a direct way. There's no policy that the government can do to lower childcare costs. But here's what they can do, because I know you're sitting there thinking, well, this is an unsatisfactory answer. Nobody wants to hear that nothing can be done. Here's what can be done. First of all, turn off the printing presses, because the inflation that's running rampant is a direct cause of the Fed monetizing the debt issued by the federal government in order to go gallivanting around the world bombing, Tom, Dick, and Harry. That's the first thing. Stop monetizing the debt, turn off the printing presses. Number two is completely make tax-free the occupation of childcare. Now, I would say reduce taxes to zero across the board, because if you're not paying government to the pedophiles ruling us and bombing people halfway around the world, then that means you're keeping money in your pocket to pay for things like childcare. And so even if the costs do stay where they're at, you can shoulder that burden a lot more effectively than if you're paying 30% of your money to put Bill Clinton on a plane to Epstein Island. But short of that, at least completely, eliminate taxes for somebody that's in the childcare business so they can pass those savings on to their consumers. And then give 100% on the consumer side of it, 100% tax deduction for childcare costs. So not only are you saying no taxes on my childcare giver, the person giving me the service, that's one side of the ledger that can hopefully reduce the cost on me as the consumer. But then on my side, say 100% tax deduction for me to pay for that service. Because if you're truly about families and you're truly about taking care of children, that's what you would do. And you would sit back as the government, you would be like, well, we have marginally less money because we're not stealing from families that are barely trying to make ends meet for the simple sin of trying to take care of their children. Maybe we can cut some pork from this other budgetary item we have. Maybe we can give a little bit less money to Halliburton. I think if you were a politician that cared about your constituents, that would be a pretty simple thing to institute. But again, that's not necessarily a government solution so much as it is government saying, all right, we screwed up. We're just going to take a step back and we're going to let the market resolve itself, and we're going to pull ourselves out of it by eliminating taxes on both sides of the ledger. That's what they can do. Nobody wants to give that answer because, if the uniparty stands for one thing, it is milk you for all you're worth.
I don't have anything to say about that, so carry on, soldier.
Next point, trade deficits. Again, another myth, another meme to destroy, a completely useless talking point. I can guarantee you that you, the consumer, have 100% trade deficit with Amazon, in the sense that you only give them money and they only give you goods. But are you really worse off? Well, of course not, because if you really thought you were worse off by giving them your money for whatever they're giving you, then you wouldn't have made the transaction in the first place. So the United States having a trade deficit in the sense that China is sending goods over here but is not buying the corresponding amount of goods coming back from the United States, Well, that's still a net benefit to the American consumer because it is increasing the supply of whatever that good is, which is lowering the cost of that good for American consumers. So again, having a trade deficit with a foreign country is a completely ridiculous metric that politicians always throw around, but it really says nothing about anything. It says no more about that than it does to say that you personally have a trade deficit with Amazon or Walmart or Publix or wherever you happen to shop. Yes, the goods are flowing one direction and the money's flowing another direction, but both of you are benefiting. That's why you entered into the exchange.
Again, that's just basic economics. I don't have anything else to say to that. But I will say that seeing as you did kind of point it out, it's kind of a moot point. Why would they ask the question? Which goes back to my point that the moderators were asking questions that don't really matter to us. Like, I really care about World War III. I really care about conscription. I really care about the social problems that we have in this country. And I really wish that some of those might have been brought up. But none of them were. And now we have to talk about tariffs and trade acquisitions and so on and so forth. At the end of the day, it doesn't really trickle down to us now, does it? So no. The question to me didn't need to be asked, and it was, and we wasted time. And I don't even really think they really answered it. All they did was say, my opponent didn't do the right thing. Then they turned around and the other person said, my opponent didn't do the right thing. We're back.
Yeah.
Right back where we started, and it was a fucking piece of shit topic anyway. So go ahead, Dane.
Yeah. The next one was another question that neither one of them answered about, you have all these people addicted to fentanyl and you have this addiction crisis. What are you going to do about it? Again, that's not a government fix. That is a societal, cultural, moral, values proposition. And, I haven't seen a breakdown in the numbers of, how many people, when you poll them about how they got into addiction, a large chunk of them are because they had a typical mundane surgery and they were prescribed hardcore drugs, pain medications.
Not addictive.
And
Not addictive. Not addictive.
Yeah, that started their addiction. And then when the doctors quit prescribing it because you're 2 years out from your knee surgery and we can't really be writing you these prescriptions anymore, you turn to street drugs like fentanyl. So that's one part of the problem. There's many other parts of the problem. One other major one is this general dark cloud of malaise that overhangs the entire American population. That is a function of our completely divided political system where everybody feels like they're in an existential crisis, the impending, doom of World War III, inflation that's driving people to the brink of financial ruin. All of these things are creating severe mental challenges for the most vulnerable people in society that may have, struggled with addiction in the past or struggle with it currently or whatever, and they turn to drugs and things like that. But all of these sort of moral decay issues that drive people to a lifestyle of addiction are all, again, when you trace it back to the root source, are the function of government policies.
By the way,
It's
what happened to
ruining people's
addiction
lives.
during COVID and all their policies? Did it go up or down?
Way up. Yeah. And again, when you cut people off, social animals that we are, they get depressed.
Or
and they
if
turn to
you
drugs.
have policies that cost them their business that have been barely holding on by a thread, and now they don't really have anything to hold on to.
Yeah.
And now they have a family that they can't support, and now they're sliding down further and further into that little doldrum of depression and anxiety and hopelessness. Hopelessness is what leads to addiction.
Yeah.
And I don't know what kind of hope is coming out of Washington, D.C. on either side nowadays. So they're not real. If anything else, they're contributing to it in that way. Yeah. And then also, letting the drug companies do whatever the fuck they want and never holding them accountable. That's also kind of part of it too.
Right. Yeah. So much like the decrease in child care costs, the what can government do to stop the addiction crisis? Again, nothing other than get its greedy paws out of damn near everything it does to drive people down that path.
They can fuck off is what they
But
can do.
again, they're
The
never
best thing
gonna
they
give
can do
that
is just to
answer.
fuck off.
Yeah.
Like,
The last two things I had here is I think it was Biden who said something about the U.S. keeping its promises. He was talking about the U.S.'s stature in the world. This kind of overarching, threat to all of us and existential to all life on Earth. The thought of World War III, of exchange of nuclear weapons between the two most heavily nuclear armed nations on the planet. That is a direct response, a direct result of the United States and its NATO allies not keeping their promise. The explicit promise to Russia in 1991, when the Soviet Union fell, was, we will not move NATO 1 inch east. And what have they done since then? Added 20 some odd countries and are now talking, if you listen to Kamala Harris a few months ago, that it is absolute fact that one day Ukraine will be in NATO. Again, turn the tables. Imagine Russia is the sole superpower, and it starts in South America, and it says in 1991, we're not going to move 1 inch north. And then it adds Brazil, and then it adds Colombia, and then it adds Costa Rica, and then it adds Cuba. And then now it said America says our red line is Mexico. We share a direct border with them. You put Mexico in your alliance, we're going to have a problem with that. And you go right up to that line and you talk about it, and then you depose their democratically elected leader because that leader happens to be too favorable to the United States, and you put in your own puppet that is pro-Russian and is talking belligerently towards America. What do you think the response from the United States is going to be? So where we are today with the brink of World War III that the uniparty foreign policy establishment in D.C. keeps pushing for is a direct result of the United States breaking promises repeatedly, not only to Russia, but to the UN and everywhere down the line. And that's just the biggest one. They've broken promises with allies all along down the line. We were best buddies with Saddam Hussein at one time. The CIA trained Osama bin Laden. You can go all down the line. The United States has created the monsters that came back to attack it, all because of broken promises.
what did we hand out during the Afghanistan-Iraq War to certain companies on this side of the border? No big contracts to rebuild the place that we were blowing up. And what's going on in Ukraine right now?
Exact same thing. Whole sections of the country are being leveled only to be bought for cheap by BlackRock and Vanguard. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a damn shame that Putin was so crazy that he blew up his own pipeline, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
He wouldn't have done that. Anyway, next topic.
And the last one is on this is, Biden and the uniparty in D.C. saying that Ukraine will win. No, they won't.
No, it's just the sheerest number. What, by the way, how many, what's the population of Russia?
I don't know the exact population of Russia or Ukraine, but I know the difference between them, which is about 100 million people. And when you're talking a land war, 100 million people is a massive advantage.
Makes a difference.
In terms of population. That means you can throw a lot more men at the problem than the other side can. Not to mention, the arms and technological capability differences between Russia and Ukraine, even notwithstanding help from the U.S. and NATO allies of Ukraine. It's night and day. And so I've heard this talked about, Thomas Massey asked this question of some of his colleagues in Congress, is they were talking about democracy, and we need to keep this war going in Ukraine and blah, blah, blah. And he just asked a simple question. He said, do you know how many because they were also bragging about the number of casualties of Russian soldiers, and they said, wasn't that great because we haven't had to expend one American life to get all these Russian casualties. And then Massey said, well, how many Ukrainians have died? And they had no clue. And that tells you a lot about these people, that they are willing to sacrifice an entire generation of men in Ukraine and then even older men now and even younger than the fighting age men because they're running low at this point, is they're willing to sacrifice an entire country's, a generation's worth of men from a country for what? There is no chance in a million lifetimes that Ukraine is going to have that is going to push Russia back to its pre-February 2022 borders. The only way that's going to happen is if Russia does it voluntarily. So when anybody tells you, when Biden sits there and tells you with a straight face, Ukraine can win, if we just give them another few $billion and a few, more 1,000 pounds of bombs and et cetera, they are telling you, I have no problem with throwing more Ukrainian lives in the meat grinder just because the donors to my campaign are going to get a few more $1 million of laundered money out of this war. That's what they're telling you.
You know what the mistake that the American people are making right now, right? They think that they don't feel the same way about us. Period. They think that they respect us. They respect our lives. They want to take care of us because we're Americans. The only reason they don't feel that way about the Ukrainians is because they're not American.
Yeah.
They don't care. They've sent our best, i.e. the military, into meat grinders, and they have been doing so for years, and they'll do it again. And they're doing it right now. Their care for life is minimal. Period. They don't care about it. And they're just placating you, which was exactly what this was tonight. It was placation. Okay, we had our debate. Okay, now go back to your little homes and do as we say. Vote for who we tell you to. America decides, did we choose? And again, I'll start it over again, Dane. Did you choose Biden and Trump? Because I didn't.
Nope.
So what are we left with? The choice or the illusion of choice?
Oh,
because if we vote for a third party,
absolutely.
that's just throwing your vote away, right?
Of course.
But these two parties have been in control for how long, Dane? Since we were
Ever?
a country? So, and it's going super awesome. So let's
Yeah.
keep doing that same thing, like
Yeah.
we always say.
For sure.
But I'm tapped out. I'm fake tappered out right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So for those, oh, by the way, just one last question, David. Your opinions, your thoughts. Who won the debate? We know who the loser was. It's the American people and probably the rest of the world.
Exactly.
Who won?
I mean,
Your honest assessment.
Honest assessment. I mean, I don't know how you could. Well, it depends. It really depends.
Mm-hmm.
Which reality do you think that there is? Do you think that Joe Biden just has a stutter and that he's brought more jobs to this country than has ever had before? Because if you thought that going in, guess what? You think that coming out.
Yeah.
And if you thought Trump was the Messiah that's going to save this country, guess what? You thought that going in and you thought that coming out. So neither one won because this wasn't even a debate. There was no real debate here. It's I was a better president. No, I was. No, there was no strategy. There was no I did this by doing this by these policies. Nothing about policy. It's just I want clean water. Well, he doesn't want clean water. I want clean water. Like fuck off. Like
9/11.
9/11. Ah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what happened tonight.
So
What do you?
I will
well,
say.
let me turn that. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Let me turn the question to you. Who do you think won?
I think Biden won, and because for the same reason that I thought that the CNN anchors weren't terrible, it's because the bar is so amazingly low. Basically, for as terrible as his public speeches are, if he could, put any sort of coherent thought out there, and he had his stumbles and his freeze moments and stuff like that, if he could even, stand up there without falling over for an hour and a half, that is going to be portrayed as a win for him. And then, of course, he has the whole media apparatus on his side, so he's got that going for him too. But I think that's why. Not on the substance. If somebody is just going on the substance as devoid of content as most of it was, to your point, David, obviously Trump had more of the hits in terms of like he's owned by China, and his regime has been lying to you. They lied about his son's laptop, and they lied to you about Russiagate, and they lied to you about all of these things. In terms of substantive points like that,
Yeah, Trump had the better hand.
obviously Trump had the better hand. But I think from an optics perspective, and that's what 95+% of this is, because it's a popularity contest of, and sticking with your theme at the beginning of most people aren't going to change their mind. The Biden supporters tuned in to cheer for him and vice versa for Trump. But for those 5 people, those undecided voters in the middle, I think probably more people were in favor of Biden than Trump necessarily, because he stood upright for an hour and a half. And that's the main thing that the non-politically initiated have is he even going to survive the next 4 years?
He's a good person. He's a good person.
Yeah, he's a good person. He's an old grandpa who everybody loves.
Yeah,
so
of course, because grandpas are never racist or say fucked up shit at Thanksgiving. No.
Yeah. So that's my honest assessment. I don't like that. That's my assessment. I think he is. If he's not the worst ever, you'd be hard pressed to find a worse president in American history than Joe Biden. There's no reason why he should be even polling above, a half a percentage point. But I'm just giving my honest assessment based on what I think the average, in the middle of the road, undecided voter thinks. And for those reasons, because his bar is so low, that's why I'm saying I think he won. But I personally don't, think that he won.
We all
like
lost.
Yes.
Just suffice to say, we all lost. But
yes, we're all in big trouble.
This is fine. This is just fine. I'm okay.
Yeah.
I'm in danger.
So,
well, thanks for sitting through this with us. If you have made it this long, or if you stuck by, or just popped in, or did anything memes, go ahead.
Yeah, I want to say absolutely. Loving the number of viewers on this stream. It's great. These are great numbers for us. And for those of you that are new here to WMD Podcast, you can see it across the top there. We are live every Friday. That includes tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern. We go for about an hour, sometimes a little bit longer. We encourage you to tune in, like, subscribe, share on every channel you can, YouTube, Rumble, X. If you're new here, you don't know, so I'll just fill you in. We've had many strikes on YouTube, and so we could be banned at any second. So even if you're a YouTube predominant viewer, make sure to follow us on X and Rumble as well, because we might be nuked off of YouTube any day. But wherever you find us, like, subscribe, share. When you're on the live streams, jump in the comments. We appreciate the back and forth. Talk about your comments on the show. Join the conversation. We love it. But other than that, you can find us at WMDpodcast.com. You can buy our merch there. You see it in the bottom right hand of the corner. You can join our email list on our website. That's another way to always stay in contact with the show, because if we get nuked, we'll send out an email and say, hey, you can find us over here. Any sort of post that you put on X or other platforms, you hashtag it with Sane Space. That helps us see it. If you have topics to suggest for us, memes for us to destroy, Sane Space, put it in comments, all of those kind of things. Give us all the algo food that that these different platforms love. But most importantly, we just thank you for being here. Thank you for tuning in. And we thank you for sharing us with friends and family, helping to grow this Sane Space one person at a time.
Well, it's been a long night, Dane, and it's been even longer, Memes. So until tomorrow night, you guys stay safe, and more importantly, stay free.
Hold on, I'm getting it.